There we go. That's good. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you all to the March 21st meeting of the Measure Z Advisory Committee. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any requests for modifications to the agenda from committee members? Staff? Seeing none, we'll move on. There is a procedural matter that I'd like to address before we get into the meat of the meeting. Mr. Robertson, who is the representative of the Fire Chiefs Association, is unable to be here due to a jury circumstance. I asked staff to investigate, to a small degree at least, the options available to us for his input. And perhaps the best thing I can do is just to defer to staff at this point and let them tell us about what options they feel are appropriate.
Sure. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Sean Quincy. I'm the Deputy County Administrative Officer in the County Administrative Office. I'll be staffing the meeting in place for Alicia, who is out today. So in investigating this question, we looked back to the resolution, the Measure Z resolution that was adopted in 2014. And it specifically notes that the makeup of the committee is to be made up of 9 members, 5 from each of the supervisors' districts, and 1 representative from the fire chiefs, 1 representative from the sheriff's office, and that is all that it says. So 1 representative who is nominated to the board confirms that nomination, and it is only that person who can sit and vote on matters before the committee.
Okay. So the staff position is that we are not allowed to have an alternate either transmit Mr. Robertson's desires and/or the chair or the staff is not allowed to record into the record his pre-designated choices. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm not sure if it's the proper time for this, but in the last meeting, we had requested a breakdown of his budget because it was just kind of lumped in like more of a line by line to see, kind of the fairness of where the money was going in with the fire programs that he was representing, the Fire Chiefs Association. Was he able to submit that? I didn't see it in the back.
There is a representative here today that's prepared to speak to the breakdown of the Fire Chiefs Association.
Do we have the breakdown of the budget, line by line?
Well, there is a formal breakdown that's part of the application in the budgetary sequence. I've asked the fire chief's representative here today to try to bring that to kind of, I'll call it an outline status since it's so lengthy. So why don't we wait at this point and see if his presentation addresses your concerns. If not, then you're certainly free to bring them forward specifically. Okay. This would be the time for a public comment on non-agenda items. If you'd like to address the committee on any item not on our agenda today, we'd invite you forward to the microphone.
I have one.
Rich?
My name is Rich Ames. I'm an at-large member. I'd like to talk about hiring personnel. This year we have the Measure Z has taken in $11 million, roughly, from Humboldt County. We have, of the 11, we have $7,500,000 that's already spoken for in the form of personnel. That means that's going to be on the books forever. We can't get rid of that. So 68% of the $11 million is already spoken for as personnel. So I'm just talking that as we progress today or this rest of this session, that we consider that adding personnel doesn't come off the books. It is very possible, it could happen, not very possible, it could happen that down the road taxes will decrease and we won't have any money left over for hoses, for fire trucks, for guns, for suits. All the money will go to personnel. So what I'm trying to make the committee aware of, that as we go through today and 2 or 3 more meetings, that we consider that personnel is a permanent thing. And it's very, very possible we could run out of money from Mazer Z somewhere down the road. Humboldt County is always in a recession into itself. So I just want you to be aware as we vote on who to allocate money, to whom to allocate money, that you consider that personnel is forever. And I think that should be in consideration. Although the personnel is needed, that's for sure. We need more policemen, we need more firemen, we need more sheriffs, but we're going to run out of money down the road. It's that simple. Thank you.
Okay. Just to address your concern in a brief degree, I don't think today's agenda is appropriate for it, but I share some of your concerns, and I think the committee, in fact, I'm going to ask the committee to bring forward in the latter stages of our process here a discussion of some sort of indexing or some sort of qualification process, because I think what you're pointing out is absolutely accurate. We will reach a point very soon, actually, where there will be no discretionary funding. The year-to-year funding of the already approved personnel positions will exhaust the totality of the revenue. So, you know, we need to be aware of that. But I think a formal discussion of that has to be in the form of an agendized item, which it is not today. So while I support your concept, I think what we need to do is wait till we can agendize a formal discussion of that issue and see what the public and what the committee, you know, feels appropriate in the way of addressing it.
Good.
Okay.
I had one comment that I wanted to add. Looking way down the road, 20 years from now, the more personnel we add, the more it adds to our unfunded liability, of which is a huge other subject that is just not, we can't handle at all. But personnel adds to unfunded liability 20, 30 years down the road.
Okay. Any other public comment on matters not on the agenda?
Yeah, I guess I'll
No, I'm just making up
My name is Chris
75,000.
Fisher. I'm with the Palo Area Volunteer Fire Department, and we received a letter that this committee may have some questions for us here at this session today. I've been fire chief out there for 8 years now. I'm the treasurer of the Southern Humboldt Fire Chiefs Association as well, and I plan on attending the Northern Humboldt Fire Chiefs Association meetings in the upcoming year.
Just, this portion of the meeting is kind of directed, and we'd like to enforce it being non-agenda items. So when we get to consideration of applications, we'll happily.
Okay, we could do that then. I didn't see us on the agenda.
You're not formally on the agenda as a line item, but the section that talks about discussion and review of the applications would be the appropriate time to speak to your specific application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to an item not on the agenda?
Go ahead.
I have a procedural question for staff. In reference to the needs of the budget versus the amount that's been applied for, I started asking other committee members about what their view within their own communities were as applies to Measure Z. And I wanted to ask staff if that is an appropriate conversation for me to have within the Brown Act.
So I would say that it is completely appropriate for committee members to discuss with each other. Just make sure that you are not meeting with, I believe it's 3 or more at a time. We want to be very aware that we're not having serial meetings, that conversation is not passed on from committee member to committee member.
So if
Let's send an agendized item.
If I engage members individually through email, that would be appropriate.
Yes, but as a committee, I will definitely warn you to not continue to pass those messages along to other committee members, because then we run into Brown Act issues.
Absolutely. I wanted clarification, and I just wanted to know if that was appropriate. Thank you.
I had a non.
Any other, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to ask too, if the next time, if a map of the districts could be included in, because I was going through some of the past funding and trying to do my homework to, just on the, you know, because there was a lot of comments when I had sat in the other meetings prior to this about, you know, conflict and the good old boy and the kind of system, is I was trying to break down like the money. I was wondering why the leftover money from the, is it 7.3 or 7.4 that the police department, you know, that Eureka takes, what's left, why they didn't equally divide it in the districts, the remainder of the districts, or, you know, all through the 5 districts. So I was looking at the districts and trying to see where the portion of the money was spent each year, to just try to kind of see if there's fairness, or once it passed this level, I guess the likelihood of the supervisors overstepping the budget that this committee represents to possibly use that money for slush funds to get reelected in their districts. So I was trying to see the consistency and where the money was going. So could there be a map included of the districts in the next? Because I'm having to constantly go back and look where the lines are and where the money is spent. Have you guys ever put together a report like that?
So are you asking for a report on how much money is spent in
If
each
there's-
district?
So I don't have to do that, all that homework. Is there a past report that's ever been done of where we have supervisors that are, corrupt, that take a portion of this money and use it to do favors in their district?
No, but I don't believe we've ever done that report.
Okay. Just to bring a little historic perspective to this, the committee in the past has always over-allocated the funding available. We would provide the Board of Supervisors with, I'll call it our A-list for lack of a better term, that we thought was pretty closely matched to the available funding. Then in our deliberation process, we would also have a secondary list that if monies were available beyond that had been projected at the time we were considering the item, we would recommend to the Board of Supervisors for, disbursement to those agencies based on the priority that had been established by the committee. In the 5 years that I've been on the committee, I can only think of one instance, quite frankly, when something that you're describing as political happened. And this committee, quite frankly, was very forceful as we could respectfully be with the Board of Supervisors, saying, we want you to understand and reinforce the fact that these 5 projects were clearly identified to benefit specific districts. I don't think anybody with any honesty could say otherwise. And none of them were included in either our primary list or our secondary list. Other than that one instance, I think it's been to the board's credit, quite frankly, that they've always funded our primary list, and to the degree that the revenue allowed, they've funded the secondary list in the sequence that we suggested. As much as we like to think of ourselves as kind of the arbiters of this, the fact of the matter is we are, as our name implies, an advisory district, or an advisory committee. So ultimately, like all decisions the Board of Supervisors make, there are political components to it. But to accuse them of being corrupt, I think, is kind of
I wasn't accusing them of being corrupt. I was just reading the comments on that Las Coast Outpost and the $1 million fire truck for Fortuna. So that's why I was just.
the $1 million fire truck for Fortuna was
It was on a couple.
not funded from Z funding, first of all, I guess would be my response.
No, it was all volunteer.
It was all money that they had raised within their jurisdiction, so, okay.
Because somebody was like, thank you. Do you read the comments?
I don't read the comments.
Okay.
Never.
So don't get your homework from.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Noted.
Okay, any other public comment not related to an item on the agenda?
Tom Mattson, Director of Public Works. Just want to note that looking at the unfunded liabilities, the county years ago changed its pension system, and I would encourage you to get a report from the CAO's office about current employees versus older employees, because the current employees do not add, or very minimally, to the the liability, because the county took steps years ago to drastically reduce its pensions. Thank you.
Any other public comment not related to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item D, which is the discussion on items. We have an action summary and/or minutes from last meeting, and any corrections or clarifications from the committee? There is one that I would like to make. There's a reference on the second page to the ranking of the applications, and the yes/no determination was, may have reflected some priorities on the part of individuals, but it was only from the perspective of eligibility. It was not any evaluation of the merit. So could we clarify the language a little bit to indicate that the committee addressed the eligibility of applicants to be considered? And that way it'll be clear to the public or anyone that reads the document that we were not in fact ranking or making a value determination on the merit of the application, only its eligibility under the ordinance.
Yeah, staff can make that change.
Okay, any other corrections? Any comments from the public regarding the minutes? Seeing none, we'd entertain a motion.
I move we approve the minutes as corrected.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. County Administrative Office updates.
We only have two updates. Again, to tag on to your discussion about the minutes. So the minutes changed this week compared to weeks and years prior even. We now have Access Humboldt, who is streaming our videos. So you can see the entire discussion via video that way. The minutes in your agenda packet only reflect the action that was taken. It's more traditional. It's the way that we've done it for the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission and such. The second item I'll note is that we've received letters of support within the last 3 days since the agenda was published, and those letters have been distributed to your committee, and they'll be posted online to our agenda after this meeting.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our consideration process for the applications. This is unfortunately going to get a little bit tedious because it'll be a repetitive voting process, so I apologize that for ahead of time, but I don't see any other mechanism by which we can approach it fairly. Before we get into that actual ranking process, it's important for us to clarify and understand all of the applications, and there had been some requests from committee members that were forwarded to the staff and then out to the applicants to try to bring clarification issues to certain applicants. I know I forwarded a couple, and I believe there were some others. So I guess my first question is, did the County Administrative Office receive any written specific responses to any requests for information?
No, we didn't receive any written responses. I understand that your question, Chair, was not given over to the City of Eureka and the City of Fortuna. However, before the meeting, I did go and basically accosted Chief Doberstein from Fortuna to let him know of your concerns, and also talk to the Director of Public Works from Eureka to hopefully pass on the message to Chief Watson or police representative.
Okay, so those requests did not get to them in a timely manner. They only received them today.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any requests from members of the committee now for an individual representing an applicant to come forward on clarification issues?
Yes, I had 3. I wanted to bring Crystal Perez forward from Arcata Police. Is she here?
Crystal Perez, Arcata Police Department Juvenile Diversion.
Okay, so in your application, you are one of the juvenile diversion counselors. And I wanted you to clarify, like not the difference, but the value of your position versus an SRO position and what you bring to the table, because I think people don't really understand that before we make decisions. You have 3 minutes.
One of the benefits of the diversion counselors is we do serve Trinidad, McKinleyville, Blue Lake. Our current SRO serves Arcata primarily. Another thing is the services that we provide the kids, counseling, drug and alcohol counseling.
Can you bring the mic closer?
Yeah, referrals to outside treatment or community resources. It's something that, most law enforcement agencies don't have. We work really well collaboratively with Humboldt County Sheriff's Office and our own department to identify these at-risk kids who are dealing with extreme issues in the home or in their community. And these kids, I think that we all understand the merit of the program. We all want to save the kids, but we have to remind ourselves these kids eventually become adults, and if we don't put in place these interventions, then we're dealing with them as adults in our rehabs and our jail systems and in our homeless situations.
Well, can I ask, how much does it cost per day, say, for juvenile hall, if you have to send somebody to juvenile hall?
So it costs $300 a day to house a kid in juvenile hall. Last quarterly report, we had 107 law enforcement referrals. If you did the math and we kept 107 kids out of juvenile hall for a year, we saved the county almost $12 million. Do that every year. if you kept, the kids aren't staying in there for that long, but we do have kids in juvenile hall. I worked there for 7 years. It's sometimes a revolving door, and they're in and out of that system, throughout their young childhood.
So it's expensive. Okay, thank you. And then, did somebody else have a, no?
I would just like to clarify the issue that we just talked about, so I understand from staff that we did forward those questions on, and we did not receive any written responses.
They were forwarded on Monday.
Okay.
With all of the other emails that went out to every application that received
Okay.
a majority yes vote.
Okay.
Okay. And Tammy Trent from Fortuna?
Tammy Trent, Mayor Pro Tem, City of Fortuna.
Hi. So I'm curious, just for clarification, so in 2016, you guys passed Measure E, and that was supposed to be for law enforcement, roads, seniors, and stuff. I was looking on the information online, or on your website, and it says that last year you spent 29% of your $1.2 million on law enforcement, which concerns me a little bit because the first year we couldn't, the money hadn't come in, and then the next year you guys had to use it for the general fund, and then last year, and now this year. So is there going to be more money going into your police force out of your Measure E, which is the...
I actually don't have the breakdown of Measure E with me.
There was a pie chart, and it said 29%, so I was curious.
Well, our police department for the first time, we just lost an officer, but was fully staffed. We were down, I think, was it 3 officers? 1 officer? And we have a code enforcement officer that we just recently, he was funded, but he just now started. So I don't know the full percentage.
Well, I'm on the Measure G committee for Arcata, and it's for cops and roads, and we were excited about Measure E for you, that it was going to be for law enforcement, but 29% just seems low to me.
It was funded for essential services, law enforcement, parks and roads.
Right.
Is what it was funded for.
Okay. But there's other things that it's had to go for over the last couple of years, like PERS and stuff like that.
Yeah, the unfunded liability takes a large portion of it, and we were running in the red every year.
Yeah.
So this has actually taken us to where we can balance our budget now.
Good. Okay. Thank you. And then I didn't ask for Orleans, but can I ask them to come forward for a question? Just for clarification. I just need one. It's fine. It's just a yes or no. Okay. So in your application, you state that you received $85,000 toward a metal shed, or you were allocated that money, and you haven't built that yet. And so if you got funded for the position, for the building that you want, are you going to be returning that $85,000, or are you asking for this money plus you would get that $85,000, and you would not use the metal shed like the other departments?
Jesse Myers, Orleans Community Service District, and Fire Chief. We did not receive $85K. We have received the allocation of that. And
right.
We would put it towards the whole unit. The whole building is at estimated $295,000. We'd utilize their money through the chiefs as the foundation, the connect to services, and some materials. We need additional funding to pay for contractor fees, specialty fees.
Okay. So, well, I didn't mean that you actually had the money, but
Yeah.
so the $85,000 would stay with you.
Absolutely.
So
we plan on utilizing it this spring.
Okay, but that would be plus the money that you'd be getting.
In addition, and on top of all the sweat equity that we put into.
So it would be 300 and some
It's
thousand.
estimated close to 500,000.
Okay. And I know you got the land for you. That was awesome. Okay, that's all. Thanks. It was just unclear in the application if you were going to keep that money or give it back, or if it was part of,
Plan to utilize it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's all.
I have a question for Orleans. Why did we just get the report from Trinity Valley Consultant Engineers today?
Penny Eckert, Orleans Fire, through the Orleans Community Services District. We provided that to the administrative office before the 7th, before the first meeting. It was inadvertently not included in your package as far as I know.
This says that the building is in terrible shape.
Yes, sir, it does, because it is. The building is in terrible shape. It's headed to the river. It's unsafe, it's dangerous. The foundation has failed, the floor has huge cracks in it. We don't have a bathroom. It's a mess.
Can you just enlarge that building that you have?
You know, that's a good question. It turns out that after the '64 flood, the county said, we're not going to allow any expansion of existing footprints of buildings that survived the flood, and we're not going to allow any new buildings in that zone. So we are in a position of being constrained in a very small space that is inadequate and failing. We can't expand it. The trouble is that to meet code, if we were to meet county code and NFPA code, we'd have to expand it substantially just to have the 4 bays plus an office, which would accommodate our current apparatuses. So yes, it is, it's sort of a catch-22. We can't expand where we are. The county won't allow us to expand. Our landlords also have plans for that land, even if the county were suddenly to change their minds. So we are in a situation with a building that's not code compliant. The bays literally have 1.5 inches to 2 inches on either side of the apparatus, and we have to back in. So that's not code compliant by any stretch of the imagination. We can't expand. We cannot stay there at that spot. And it's also not and cannot be made ADA compliant. We don't have water to wash up with, so after an incident, we have no way of decontamination, whether it's a medical incident where there were, trauma or anything. So it's a real challenge for us, and that's why we're looking to move to land that's outside that floodplain where we can build safely.
And then in your application, you say non-compliance, old fire station. Non-compliant with who?
So as the engineering report will tell you, it doesn't currently meet county code. It doesn't meet National Fire Standard either, because the NFPA has set standards for how big a fire, if you have a regular fire engine, you're trying to back it into a tiny space, they recognize that as not being safe for the volunteers or for the apparatus. So it doesn't meet NFPA standard, and it does not county compliant. And I would be, we've been getting along with the black widow spiders all right, but I don't think the health department would approve of that either, frankly.
How many fires do you go on a year, approximately?
I'm going to ask Jesse to answer that.
We respond to about 80 calls a year. They range from structure to wild land.
I didn't hear what you said. How many?
Pardon. Actual 80 calls a year. That
80.
will be a potential 4 to 5, depending on the year. Structure fires, maybe another dozen or so wildland. But the majority of our calls are medical and anything from lift assist to a gunshot wound. And we're all there is for first responders in the area. So please support our request. So we'll continue to support you, support our county.
I have a question. So the offset, you guys have a good relationship with, and I'm real familiar of the money that moves between the Crook tribe and the Forest Service and the partnership and the tribal burning and the millions of dollars, because from our area, most of it goes to the Crook tribe. Do you guys assist with that stuff, and is there any way for them to help with the rest of it, the costs associated with this building?
That's a good question. We do assist on Trex burns, cultural burns.
Because that's probably a majority of your calls, right?
No, it's a seasonal thing. It's a 1 week kind of event throughout the year that we do that with them. They just did a spring burn now. We weren't in with that, but
Okay.
we have discussed with the tribe that they were looking for additional potential funding for us. That's no promise, but we do service the Crook tribe and
And their
we're-
community
and the community, yes.
Yeah, it seems like there would be a little more hand-holding with you guys and efforts to.
It's a tricky situation there. It's not as easy as said as done.
'Cause they do get quite a bit of money from, participating in these mitigation agreements and
They do.
selling the water and dewatering that area, so they should be kicking back to the community.
They should be.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just speak to that. Penny Eckert again, Orleans Fire. As you may know, the Karuk tribe, as the Hoopa tribe has done, is working to develop its own firefighting force. So they handle, they are working to work with both prescribed fire and wildland fire. We are primarily structure fire, first responders for community, and that community includes tribal and non-tribal members.
We have to, I'm very aware of the costs associated with that because we often have to cross over and protect the whole upper forest because that community is not outfitted to protect the area.
Okay, I think we understand the questions that have been addressed. Let's try to move on. Any other questions of clarification from committee members?
I have a question for AJ Transitional Living. No. My question is, in the application, you expressed that you were looking at expanding other grant options. I wanted to know what other grants you had intended to apply for or were actively pursuing.
What have we? Well, we're looking towards, in August, that donation for the poor through St. Joe's. And a small one, a very small one, for $3,000 for beds in McKinleyville.
Okay.
And that's because we haven't done a full grant outlook yet. That's what we're planning on doing. That's
Okay.
in the planning stages.
We're actually in the process of working with Humboldt Area Foundation using their database. And we had a meeting with Arcata House this morning with the director of Arcata House to learn better how to go about. We're a brand new nonprofit, and we're still on a fairly steep learning curve, but we met this morning with the director of Arcata House, and she taught us a whole bunch about how it is you go about getting grants, where to look, who to talk to, what to say in your grant. She was incredibly helpful to us.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like representatives from the city of Eureka, Arcata, Fortuna, Rio Dell, and the MIST program to come up and address the panel regarding current positions that are funded through Measure Z, and are there any alternative funding sources for those positions if Measure Z doesn't fund them.
Staff, can you turn up that microphone and not our microphones? There you go.
Yeah, and please speak directly into the mic. It's a directional mic, so you got to really speak into it.
For the MIST proposal put forth by the department, there are no personnel expenses in there, so I'll let the Eureka City folks talk about their personnel.
Good afternoon. Brian Stevens, Captain, Eureka Police Department. The positions that we have in the MIST program has been around for 4 years now. It's been internationally recognized through the Herman Goldstein POP Award, and those positions are vital to our department. The funding, additional funding sources as far as personnel costs, we're obviously not going to fire or lay off the employees that are currently employed by MIST funds. Our park ranger is here today, and I couldn't honestly look him in the face and say, we hired you under Measure Z, we're not getting those funds and letting you go. But at the same time, you have to understand our budget's very constricted the way it is. We've frozen 5 positions for the sole purpose of retention and recruiting of our own people to give them a raise. So we've had to cut our positions. It will be very difficult for the Eureka Police Department to fund those positions. However, we will find a way to do it, of course. But it would definitely be a help to have the Measure Z funds to alleviate any other strains on our budget, allow us to move forward other projects that we have that are vital to the infrastructure of our department and to the successful services we provide to all those that come to Eureka to live, shop, or visit.
Just, if you don't mind, first of all, I just want to clarify, technically, I had forwarded a request to our staff to make your staff and Fortuna aware of a kind of the content area of a question I had, because the question is going to seem quite harsh, quite frankly, but I didn't want you to feel ambushed. And I want to confirm, first of all, I've gotten different impressions about, did you in fact receive a communication from the county indicating that I had some questions about missed interaction issues?
So Sergeant LaFrance spoke to, I don't remember his name, the gentleman there, I believe, right before the meeting, and he passed that question on to me, yes, sir.
So you did not receive the original? Did I misunderstand our staff? I thought I heard Mr. Quincy say that he made those contacts just this morning, but I thought I heard a correction saying that in fact they had been forwarded on Monday. Could we solve that issue first of all? Did I misunderstand what you said?
Did you receive the email that I sent you on Monday?
Yes, the chief did receive the email stating that you wanted us to appear to answer questions.
Okay.
It was, I won't say vague, there was a summary of
Okay.
an issue, but the question brought up right before the meeting was not a part of that
Okay.
email.
Okay, I want to first of all apologize for that because my interest is very much not bringing people in here and having them feel like they're ambushed. I don't think that's a fair way of doing business, and I don't want to do that. My question is in the context of the following. The MIST program is proposed to be expanded to other jurisdictions and so on based on its, functionality and so on. And quite frankly, I had heard some discussions in the kind of the community jungle drums about kind of a growing divide between the county and the city of Eureka and how that program was going. And on the 2nd of February, there was an article in the Lost Coast Outpost, and there was also reporting in the local paper about the abatement of the Kirkpatrick property down by the Bayshore Mall. And I just want to read a couple of quick comments and get your take on them. It first of all quotes Mr. Gerving, who is the city's building official, and he says, Gerving said that the plan had been for MIST, a collaborative initiative with Eureka Police Department, to be at the site on Thursday when the initial contacts with the residents were made. As it turns out, Gerving said, those county staff didn't come. Then it goes on, county staff pushed back. Heather Mueller, who is apparently a PIO, said, DHHS mobile outreach was informed of the eviction shortly before it began. MIST was not contacted. There was never a plan for DHS to be part of it. It does not lend the sense that this is a well-oiled, coordinated machine if, in fact, that reporting is accurate. So I guess the first question I would have, do you feel that reporting of that incident is accurate?
No, I don't.
Okay. So you don't believe Mr. Gerving made that comment, or?
I just don't believe Mr. Gerving had the direct, he was getting the information second or third hand. Sergeant LaFrance is the one that did the coordination for the event when it comes to outreach and social services. And I have a timeline for you I can give you as far as how that outreach went and the responses we got. Okay. There was a second part of that, it'll come back to me. But so about 2 weeks out, we knew about the operation and we were going to move forward with it. We reached out to 3 different organizations. We reached out to MIST. We reached out to Betty Chen, and we reached out to the Eureka Rescue Mission for assistance because we knew people were going to be displaced once the operation was completed. MIST told us that that is a more in-line type operation with SOS, the county's SOS program. Not all those clients, there was not MIST clients in there. We did check, and there was no clients of the Department of Health and Human Services that were actually, that we had identified living in that compound. So I could see why they decided that this was not a direct issue. MIST is also a longer-term process. We work with people with the outreach and the programs and get them in the services versus we're going to go in and have to displace people and we need your assistance. That's kind of 2 different realms when you look at the responsibilities of those. So we really reached out to those 3 agencies. SOS agreed to come. They agreed to come till the night before. That morning, we made the phone call to let them know because there was operational security issues, so we had to keep things under wrap till we were actually on scene and secure. We made notification that morning to SOS, and they refused to come out to the scene to actually provide any assistance for those that were being displaced. The only person that did come out was a representative from the Betty Chen Kwan Center and did provide services to at least 1 individual and offered other information to others that were being displaced at that time.
Okay, so would it be a fair characterization to say that your position is that the impression that this article leaves is probably ill-informed based on Mr. Gerving not in fact being in possession of the full factual information?
At no fault to Mr. Gerving, sir, but yes, I believe the information in there is not accurately
represented. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Brian Ahern, Chief of Police for the City of Arcata Police Department. Currently, Measure Z funds, and what we've asked for is continued funding for 1 school resource officer position and for 2 juvenile diversion counselor positions. There are no other alternative funding sources for those positions. We would have to go to our general fund, and we're in the budget process right now. As you know, we would try very hard to find the money, but that money does not exist right now. And in addition to the Measure Z funding, I just want to add, too, that the city does pay for all of the equipment that the juvenile diversion counselors and the school resource officer use, things like vehicles, cell phones, computers, overtime, all those things are paid for by the city, including training. The continued funding for these positions is absolutely vital. We're providing, life-saving services out there in the community, and we would have to find a way to try to keep these resources in place, but at the moment, there are no other funding sources. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill Oberstein, Fortuna Police Chief.
Oh, I'm still talking to the Arcata chief there, if I could. You applied for $353,367.25. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And what would happen if you didn't get all that money? How would you proceed?
Well, we would have to go back to our budget and take a look and see if we can find the money elsewhere within the general fund. Understanding that budget priorities are constantly shifting, and in law enforcement, as you know, we're one crisis away from having unanticipated expenses. So there are no guarantees. This is an important program. What Measure Z provides, quite frankly, is stability. With the acknowledgement that we can move forward and continue to work with these children and their families. And without that guarantee, the program could end at any time.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I want you to know that there's a particularly difficult position up here, turning down a lot of money that's sorely needed in the community, and I appreciate your efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Oberstein, Fortuna Police Chief. No, we do not have the money allocated in our budget for the two vital positions that we're applying for with Measure Z. Just as the Arcata Chief said, we would have to try to find that somewhere. Matter of fact, for $200,000 in the deficit at a recent Measure E meeting I went to, that we're looking to fill that gap. So at this time, no, there is no additional funding.
Just a follow-up, if you don't mind. First of all, I just want to make sure. I had also asked staff to communicate to you that I had a question about your budgeting and so on. Did that message get to you?
No, it did not. I found out when I walked at the door.
Okay. Then my question's probably unfair, but I'll ask it, and if you tell me it's none of my business based on our lack of notice, I'll consider that a fair answer. In your application, I noticed that the roll-up costs on your salary are 106% of your base salary, and the salary amount requested is about almost 30% higher than the equivalent position in Arcata and almost 40% higher than the equivalent position with the city of Eureka. Do you have any sense why that anomaly exists?
I do not. I received those numbers from our finance director, and I'd be more than happy to come back with a breakdown of.
Yeah, if you, like 106% roll-ups is pretty unusual, even in the public safety arena. So, it's a technical question, but it's, like I said, we are in a bad position here trying to allocate, $1 for $5 worth of need, so every little bit helps. So thank you for the info.
I'd be happy to provide that information.
Okay, yeah, like I said, my specific question is, you show 72,000 base salary, and you show your salary roll-ups as being 76,921, or 106% for your base salary, even given the workers' compensation and pension liabilities of public safety officers. That's unusual.
I know that the health benefits and the PERS have went up dramatically for the city, and I did notice that myself, that the benefit cost is more than the actual salary, but I did not get a breakdown from our finance.
Okay. Yeah, just a written response back to the staff would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I will do that.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Could we go back to the old method of asking the applicants to identify their number, please?
Oh, okay. Yeah. we know which application this one is, but would future speakers indicate what numerical application you're speaking to? Thank you.
I'm speaking to the Drug Task Force agent and the school resource officer.
Which is 15 A, B, and C.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Certainly.
a question for the police chief of Fortuna. I would appreciate more in-depth description of what the operational costs of rent, utilities, and phones are for. And then in addition to the description, more thorough description of the consumable supplies for $5,000.
Yes, for the school resource officer, the consumable supplies are things like badge stickers, pencils, pens, Halloween bags, coloring books, things like that that are handed out to the children. I can tell you a roll of 1,500 badge stickers is $1,000. Just bought some. And as far as the 12,500 I believe you're speaking to, that was administration overhead costs, and later on when we get to our presentation, we plan on taking that out.
Thank you.
Jeff Connor, Adult Police Department. I believe I'm number 16. That's what's stamped on the top of my application. I discussed with the city manager this morning, thinking this might be the question you wanted to ask, what would happen if we didn't get our funding for Measure Z. He was fairly non-committal. We are currently understaffed, as most of the small departments in Humboldt County are, and it is my best guess that if we are not funded for this from Measure Z, that I will lose some of the ability to hire police officers in the future. I will have to replace the part-time clerical position with half of a police officer. Is there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Were there additional questions regarding the missed application by DHHS?
No, so you still plan on working with the city of Eureka and then expanding those services into Arcata, McKinleyville,
Right.
Southern Humboldt?
Yeah. The main reason that we separated this year is because the only money that we got from the city's proposal was for housing and substance abuse treatment. And we were very mindful that we were getting it from the city of Eureka, so it was really restricted to people that either came out of the Palco Marsh or were residents of the city of Eureka. Well, more and more communities wanted the same kind of service, and we have some additional money, but not really enough for short-term housing for the people that have serious mental illness and have to get off the street immediately. So this will allow us, by making it for the whole county, it will allow us to provide short-term emergency housing for people with serious mental illness and other complications wherever they are in the county. So it's solely for that purpose. The positions of the staff that serve the program for mental health are paid for through mental health funds. And that was the situation in Eureka, too. Is that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, could I make a comment or ask the lady a question? You say you're going to expand the MIST program into other communities.
Mm-hmm.
What capacity are you going to expand? Are you going to create housing, counseling, what?
Well, right now, we're working on housing everywhere in the county. We're trying to improve the housing situation everywhere. But in terms of the folks that MIST does, what they do is they send a mental health clinician, and I brought an example here, Anna, who actually goes out to folks, and we work with law enforcement in the communities. Like, for example, in Garberville, we would work with the sheriff there, and in his routine work, he probably encounters people that he believes have mental health issues. And so when Anna goes down there, she would travel with him and try to assess the individual, and if the person needed immediate shelter, we could use the funding that we have to put that person into immediate shelter in terms of a motel or something similar to that while we look for housing. Everybody knows that housing is in very short supply. So for the MIST folks, oftentimes we have to do a make-do situation. We don't like using motels, but sometimes that's better than leaving folks on the street. People that have serious mental illness have particular challenges of being outside on the street as part of their treatment. For example, if they are getting back onto medications, they're extremely drowsy and sleepy, and it makes them unsafe to be out of doors and puts them more at risk. So someone like that was trying to get back on medications, we would want to make sure that they had shelter and a place to stay. And then we would continue to engage with those people. And once they get hooked into the MIST program, we put them in our housing program so we can start looking for permanent housing for the folks that need it and that qualify for it.
What do you do with someone who's into their mental state to the point they can't take care of themselves at all? Where do they go? What happens with them?
Well, if it's serious enough, they would get transported to Sempervirens Hospital, which is a psychiatric hospital, to try to get them stabilized.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
Based on your individual application, those funds would support the MIST operations within Eureka as well as within the greater Humboldt County area?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't plan to abandon Eureka at all. We want to continue to provide the service to Eureka, but we also want to be able to provide it to Fortuna, McKinleyville, and Garberdale places.
Thank you.
I can elaborate a bit more about the expansion as well. We have been working with the MIST program here in Eureka, and we expanded about a year ago to the Arcata Police Department. And what that looks like is we go on ride-alongs and provide targeted outreach to high utilizers of services, so folks who get frequent calls, are frequently in and out of the hospital. Hospital may it be Mad River, St. Joe's, SV, CSU. So we expanded about a year ago to the Arcata area and just started ride-alongs with the Sheriff's Department this month, actually. And we're doing outreach in the McKinleyville area as of now. And we hope to expand, and with the funding, it would provide us more flexible funding for our folks, so that has been an ongoing barrier for staff.
Thank you. I know Chief Robertson indicated that he wanted to speak a little bit on behalf of the Fire Chiefs Amalgamated application. He's unable to be with us as a result of jury duty, so is there a representative of the Fire Chiefs Association that could give us an overview? This is the most complex application simply because it's an aggregate of, 30 or 40 agencies, so if you could just kind of take us through it and help us understand the breakdown, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
This is number 26, by the way.
Justin McDonald, I'm the president of the County Fire Chiefs Association. And just to attest, you're right, 36 agencies were polled for their equipment needs. So Mr. Quincy is providing a hopefully more concise breakdown of what our request is for. Really close. So just going down from the top, the first two items, the Humboldt Bay training improvements and the fixed training facilities, were on the request last year, but due to the limited funds, we opted to postpone them until this year's. So that's kind of our first on the list to be funded.
Is that the Hillficker site we're talking about?
Hillficker site, that's to pave it so they can have their equipment not driving around on gravel. The undeletable items is county planning. That's Sabelle and her crew that works with the Fire Safe Council and the Fire Chiefs Association to do district annexations in the planning. Dispatch services pays for pretty much every fire agency except for Humboldt Bay and Fortuna for dispatch services. And then the out-of-district response is for that 299 Maple Creek corridor that Blue Lake, Willow Creek, and Neelan all respond out to. So that's right off the top, a little over $1 million on those items. The next layer down is all equipment. None of what we're asking for is for personnel. This year, just to be kind of on the up and up, our Chiefs Association has a subcommittee, and we had cut out 1.1 million of what the request was. There was JAWS Alive, there was thermal imaging cameras, many more sets of personal protective equipment, and our goal was to try to keep it close to that $2.3 million. So 45 sets of structure gear, 61 sets of wildland gear, Shelters are the aluminized tents that the wildland firefighters used in case of emergency. They can't get away from the fire. You put that on as a protective measure. The SCBAs are the air packs that the firefighters use to go inside and fight the structure fires. Just on a side note, this is one of those key ones. The national standard is changing. The air packs are being upgraded. So this price we were able to kind of lock in on the state bid. Next year that won't be available. They'll be more expensive. And bottles are tied to the SCBA, so every pack that you get one bottle. Reality is you need way more than that, so you get spare bottles to outfit the firefighters. Radio request was for Humboldt Bay to upgrade their radio system. That goes in line with the upgrade to dispatch. The fire department needs the mobile radios and portable radios. And then the last one on is 420 lengths of various sizes of hose for the different fire agencies. I don't have a specific breakdown. The 36 agencies responded to a needs assessment. We put them in as one big tally, and then we tried to do our best to cover all of those agencies that put the request in.
Any questions of Chief McNall?
Yes, I have a question regarding the air packs. Does that include any of the 5th District fire? Because, you know, we often live in smoke-filled throughout the entire summer months and into the fall.
The 5th district, so this is for structure fires. So the firefighter it's the air pack on their back that they go inside. I cannot, off the top of my head, tell you which ones are getting them.
My other question was on the hose, because I know that the Klamath Trinity did the mold remediation throughout throughout all the schools, Burt Ranch down to Witchpeck, Orleans, through the 5th District as well, and they did upgrades, and we currently don't have any hose fittings to fit any of the schools if there was a fire.
Yeah, I can't attest to what the schools have. This is to outfit the hose on the engines itself, various sizes that they use either for wildland or for structure, or the hydrant connection to the fire engine.
Thank you.
So I have a question.
Excuse me, I have the floor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you tell me what annexations Cybele and planning staff are working on this upcoming fiscal year, please?
Currently, Sabel's crew is working with the Fire Chiefs Association and a couple of the supervisors to develop this plan that will be presented back to the supervisors. And essentially, it's a framework so that when this area that's essentially unprotected has a procedure that county staff and the supervisors can follow. I know there's a couple areas that were talked about down by Redway, Benbow area. I know up in our neck of the woods out towards the Maple Creek and Fickle Hill and Jacoby Creek area are talked about, but nothing for sure yet.
Rich Ames here. Under equipment, this equipment is added up, the total is added up, but what, 36 departments submitted to you? For
Correct.
instance, you want 25 shelters, maybe one department, Miranda said, we want 25 shelters.
Probably not. Miranda would be asking for, but
an example.
Yes, so it could be a varying, 15 departments are asking for a handful of these shelters. One thing to note, all of these equipment, and the sheriff can attest to it, they all come with expiration dates. The firefighting structure gear is only good for 10 years from the date of manufacturing.
Right.
OSHA's coming online with enforcing that. So we're trying to not buy everything in year one under Measure Z because then it all comes due. So we're trying to piece it together throughout this 5 years so that everybody kind of staggers their purchases. So that's why, yeah, it's 25 shelters, but it may be, 15 agencies that are asking for various shelters.
Thank you.
Arnie?
Yeah, you mentioned that you're replacing SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, I'm sorry, because they're becoming obsolete. Now, this does not include the ones we just bought.
Correct.
Those are
out there,
current
they're in
standards.
use, and
These
again,
are-
the same.
These are in addition then.
These are in addition. Just for example, my agency has requested a replacement. Ours are 15 years old. Next year, they'll become obsolete. The bottles will expire. and it's about a $390,000 expenditure.
Thank you.
Just want to reiterate, these are the basics that you need to do your job.
You bet. And just like you asked the police officers, what would happen if the funding, this is the essentials: air packs, structure gear, wildland gear, hose. If you don't have those, we don't fight fire, plain and simple.
I have a brief question. You said there was several items that were deleted from last year's request, with an understanding of what the budget constraints were. How do you feel this year is different?
This year is even worse. Every year the available funding gets knocked down. And so when we were going through our planning phases this year, again, we cut out $1.1 million in needed equipment, but we were looking through the Homeland Security grant to maybe fund the thermal imaging cameras for these agencies instead of coming to Measure Z. The thing with the Measure Z funds, this is the same request. This equipment, hose, gear, has been the standard that the fire service has asked for. So what the priority we're asking is the stuff that was cut last year, the big ticket item, the training tower for the Eel River Valley and the upgrades to Humboldt Bay is kind of, we made that a sacrifice last year, and this year that's kind of our lead out question for the request.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions of clarification before we begin the ranking process? Any public member like to speak to the issue of clarification of an application, not advocacy, but clarification?
I would like some clarification from Police Chief Norton on his application and exactly, if you can go through and expand on what you're asking for and the service that you provide.
My name is Dana Norton. I'm the Chief of Police for the Hooper Valley Tribe.
Could you put the microphone close to your mouth, please, so we can hear?
My name is Dana Norton. I'm the Chief of Police for the Hooper Valley Tribe.
Shane McCullough, Hooper Valley Tribe Police Officer.
Hello, and thanks for considering our application.
Number on the application. Number on the application.
Yeah, we're unaware.
I'm unaware
20.
of that, sir.
20.
20.
This is our first time applying for this, so bear with me. Myself and along with the tribe have identified that only 4% of the valley floor, or the reservation in whole, is being provided in public safety. That means 96% of the valley, especially in the mountainous areas, are going unmanned. What this means is we also have identified that drug dealers are getting smart. So they're not coming through Highway 96. They're taking these offshoots, they're coming over, and these are direct shoots into our valley and polluting our people in our community. So having extra personnel and the resources to man those areas would be much appreciated.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Do you have any other funding sources if this doesn't fall?
Absolutely. We were rewarded the CTAS grant from 2018. We applied for that this year as well, as also there's a traffic grant for an officer through the BIA OJS we're applying for. That's due May.
I am. So specifically, through the area and the territories that you police, is there any, I guess I want you to expand on the hand-holding that you do with the Forest Service, the Coast Guard, and because it's beyond the reservation when somebody's missing, and because a lot of times people don't know the territories when they get lost or when they drowned in the river, and there's a delayed response time. So what these officers do is a lot more than just police those territories during a time of fire and helping people get to where they need to be. And the probation offices often filled, so we have to actually use Trinity Valley in the 5th District, or Trinity County Juvenile Hall a lot of times. So I've sat and had to do transport before with an officer on a female. So a lot of times the services that are provided here that you just take for granted are kind of a little bit different in the 5th District. And I guess I wanted to expand on that a little because they're asking for radios and different stuff, and there's not cell service. So we're dependent upon the radios. There's not somebody to respond immediately to Orleans, to Witchpeck, to Trinity County, the Trinity County line, and it's often our officers that have to do that. And there's no markings. There's no road markings, there's no house numbers, there's no, like I said, there's no cell service. So it's often difficult for us to communicate, and often our officers have to go accompany county people through the mortuary, but it takes away from the services. So we have a problem with the cartel. We have a problem with the dangers of trafficking through the community of those back roads. Coming from downriver, coming from Oric, the imports, they will try to not use the roads and use our back roads. And it's often a danger to people like me that hunt, that gather, that do things in the mountains. We can no longer do them without an escort or without a person. So if we could do these things that we've always done here, there's 8 tribes in the Humboldt County area, and we often have to all get together to do things that we've always done here because it's dangerous. And it's really, I mean, it doesn't sound probably familiar to somebody that doesn't do those things, but to us, in order to carry on our religion and way of life, we often have to do those things. We often have to get in a boat when the HSU student comes up intoxicated and drowns, and, we have to do it as a community. And I don't know. I don't know what to do about those type of things, about putting signs up about the river safety and, the dangers of going out in the mountains and the things that happen up there with the hunters and the people that want to go get mushrooms, and we have to go look for them. So.
All right.
It's a little bit bigger is what I wanted to, and I'm sensing that he's a little bit nervous, but it's a little bit bigger than what a traditional officer would probably have to deal with, I guess.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shane.
Any other questions of clarification?
Mr. Chairman?
I asked a question of the Fortuna chief, and I see him approaching, so I'm going to offer him the courtesy of speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Mayor Pro Tem went out and got the numbers that you requested, so I thought I'd give those to you.
Certainly.
So for the benefits breakdown, medical, $26,000. CalPERS unfunded liability, $25,000. CalPERS employee, $14,000. Workers' comp, $10,000. And medical disability, $2,000.
Okay, so the 106 is in fact accurate then?
That's the 76,000 number for
Yeah.
the benefits.
Okay, thank you. Sheriff Hansel?
Sean, can you remind me how much do we have to allocate today? What's our bottom number?
Basically 35.
I believe it's 3.5 million.
Okay, 3.5 million. We have something around 14 million on the table as far as projects go, something like that. That's
correct.
So I would like to know if there's anyone, any of the applications that that we've pushed forward this far, is there anyone that would like to modify their application and modify their numbers so we can kind of get an accurate count here before we take a vote?
Glenn? Is Ernie here? Okay. Oh.
So please be specific as far as what your application number is and what you're taking away and what your bottom line is. And the staff will track it on the spreadsheet up there.
Okay, we've already withdrawn our vehicle from that. I went and talked to the city manager, or the city finance.
So you've withdrawn 15A.
15A and 15B, the school resource officer and the drug task force officer. And so I went and talked to him, and we are able to lower those down to, I told him the maximum cuts we could take. And he said that we could take off $15,000 for the drug task force officer. I have my notes here.
Chair,
May I have clarification on exactly which application we're discussing at this point?
We're 15C, I believe.
Yeah, 15C.
15, I don't have that list.
It's Drug Task
Of
Force,
the-
15C, yeah.
Okay, 15C for the Drug Task Force Officer. Taking off 15,000 for the Drug Task Force Officer.
That's the overtime amount, I assume.
That is the operating cost. The overtime, we don't have any control over. how
Okay, no,
much
there was a 15,000 entry for that as well, so.
15,000, and on the, and then the School Resource Officer taking off, let's see, it was 17,000 on the School Resource.
So 15B, 17,000 off of. I just think that bottom line is what the county staff would need. So 17 off the SRO and 15,000 off the DTF. Okay.
Well, they're two separate lines. They're B and C, I believe.
Yeah.
So 17 off one, 15 off the other.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Maggie Fleming, District Attorney, item number 25. I spoke to my business manager. I regret I wasn't here last week, but I was here 2 weeks ago when I heard the actual total amount that you all are tasked with trying to determine, and given the number of applications. And she said what we could do, please, is ask solely for the Deputy DA position. As I outlined, we've been using 2 retired annuitants to do a job. It's been in excess of 7 years, and I'm concerned that eventually CalPERS is not going to allow us to continue to use retired annuitants. So that is one position. The other position is the administrative analyst. Between grant funding, for those of you who don't know, 20% of our budget is grant funded. As recently as 6 or 8 years ago, you were still allowed 10 or 15% of every grant was to go towards the person who oversaw it, who was tasked with collecting the data. It's very time consuming. All of that's been cut. So it's a significant task between victim witness, my business manager, and the investigators who work various fraud units that are grant funded to do all that. So that's why we would still ask for the administrative analyst for that position, as well as then hopefully they would help us with the other data type work that second analyst would do. So in essence, we would ask for the deputy DA and the administrative analyst position. I've tallied the salaries as listed on our application, and that comes to $249,072. And that's item 25.
That they are requesting.
That we are requesting. We would take out those other 2 positions. And the legal secretary off. That's correct. Just one.
The balance of the request as amended would be 222, I understood?
The balance would be 249,072 for one administrative analyst and for one deputy DA.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Question?
Thank you. Very, very quickly, you said that you may not be able to use retired annuitants. Is that something that's being looked at politically, or is that something definitely coming?
So recently, HR put out a memo from the California PERS. They really do not want the continual use of retired annuitants. They understand sometimes in times of emergency, sometimes if someone has specific knowledge, but using them year in and year out. So both the sheriff and I are obviously very concerned about that because we rely on those to fill the gap.
Are they still under current PERS allowed to do about 6 months equivalent?
That's exactly.
I think 960 hours is.
960, that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Matson, Director of Public Works. I have several applications. The first one, 30A, I believe, is our brush cutting application. we would be willing to look at funding the personnel and operating costs out of SB 1 instead of asking the Measure Z to fund it. We believe they qualify for Measure Z because this both provides road maintenance as well as fire safety, which is really technically not a roads division funding issue. But we would be willing to look at funding the operating costs and the personnel so that we would just be asking for a one-time allocation for the equipment. And so that would be a reduction in $228,000 for the personnel and $176,380 for the operating cost annually. So it cuts it in about a half. For our other two applications, they are both very scalable. We know we spend $50,000 a year out of our base budget for illegal dump site cleanups. Anything we could get is better than nothing, so I would leave that as a very scalable thing. I won't say there's a minimum, but if it doesn't meet 50,000, if it's 10,000, I would take that. If it's 5,000, I would take that. If it's $120 for 1 ton, I would take that. And again, on road maintenance, application 30C, realize we do still defer about $10 million in maintenance activities every year. While it's not quite able to jump that level immediately, I would ask for that if I could. We do know we could put down an additional $3 million a year in road maintenance just with what we have and using contractors. But again, that item is very scalable. With road maintenance, we'll take whatever we can get. If we get $250,000, we would put $50,000 into each crew's materials and spread it throughout the county. But the more you give us, the more we can do. So again, that is a very scalable item. And so I don't want to sit here and say I have to have this as a minimum. I can say that anything would help, and we do still defer a huge amount of maintenance, and Measure Z has been critical to our activities over the past few years with our roads division. Thank you.
I do have a question, Tom. Thanks for being here. Every year, just refresh my memory, every year you've taken this stance, and there hasn't really been, I don't think there's a year that you've gone that you haven't reduced or basically pushed the roads has been aside for other projects. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so it's kind of like an afterthought, even though it was definitely a part of the ballot language, county roads. And then for the panel discussion, I think we all know, but what are the conditions of the county roads right now?
Horrible. We just received about another $20 million in storm damage based on top of the $20 million that we received in 2017, and we have about $300 million in deferred maintenance. On a scale of 0 to 100, our roads are rated right a little above 50, which means they're in horrible shape. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom, I have a question too. Almost all of Humboldt County has desperate chuckles that need to be repaired and brush clearing and all that stuff. But Southern Humboldt, we have chuck canyons. The slides are disappearing, taking the roads with them. We have a critical problem down there. Is brush clearing more important than that, or what? How do you prioritize that? Are you waiting for federal funding on those, or?
Well, I have to give you a quote from Santa Cruz County before I start. We're not England. We don't drive on the right side of the road here, and we drive on what's left of the road. It's not just Southern Humboldt. All of our rural areas, our geology, other than Hoopa, where we have severe problems or no problems, we have issues with geology. And we've used a significant amount of Measure Z money to fill potholes. But if you're talking the bigger sites, most of those are storm damage sites, and there's a very specific process we have to go through in order to get reimbursed. And that's why they sit out there for a year or two or even more as they go through the approvals, because if I go jump on a site and go ahead and fix it, the feds say you didn't follow the procedure, you eat that money, and I can't afford to spend $10 million, my entire road budget, on one spot. So I really have to follow through with those procedures. So if you're looking at Shelter Cove Road, Panther Gap, Alder Point Road, many spots on Mattoll Road, they're in the storm damage program, and we are pushing them through, but they have to follow the process. Every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. Otherwise, we don't get reimbursed, or they come back later and take the money away, which is even worse.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
After you.
I appreciate the explanation, because a lot of people, especially down in our area, don't understand that when you go out and try to repair something that you don't have the budget to repair, and they say, you guys tried this, you're stuck with it. I appreciate you explaining why a lot of this stuff isn't being done, that you're waiting for the proper funding, going through the proper procedures, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Tom.
We know that, Governor Brown was highly criticized for spending a big part of California's road budget in Central Valley because, the draining of the aquifer and the viaducts and everything were constantly, because the ground is shifting because they're it's all going to farming. Well, the same thing is happening here too. If you look at where these roads are sliding, where it's happening, we are draining the aquifer here too. Have you at all attempted to contact the new governor and write to him about any of our road concerns, or see if there's any shifting of the California budget to this area, or our representative or McGuire or anybody?
We have talked to our representatives. I'm a little bit afraid of the new governor because he wants to tie roads to housing, and which would basically remove our entire new gas tax because we don't build a lot of housing up here. Really, it goes through a long process. The SB1 was a 5 to 10 year process we went through with the legislature to get that moving forward. And, I rely on my board members to talk to the politicians, so I know Virginia Bass pushes for a lot of what we need at the state level. And I work with the agencies, Caltrans and Federal Highways. Right now we're working with our agencies on the new federal highway bill. We will be putting in requests. But personally, no, I have not contacted the governor, and that's not really something that I do. I contact our legislatures and work through them.
Okay. Well, for our area in the 5th District, I would be willing to, I have a relationship with those people and with Governor Newsom's advisor.
Ask him to come up and take a ride.
Yeah.
Well, I would, if you gave me some stuff, I'd be willing to send it out and assist you in some way.
Okay, well, just be advised that SB1 was only 1/3 of the solution statewide. And there is still, like I say, we still have $10 million a year we defer. We settled for SB1 because we knew that we could get the votes for that. If we kept pushing for the total, we were never going to get that to pass, and we'd be back to square one with nothing.
Yeah. Well, I've been beating on his door about the housing issue here.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Chair, through the chair, can I get the total number again for request 30A, what that amount comes to?
I'm a little bit old, so I can no longer do that kind of math in my head automatically.
If you want to give us just the reductions, that's fine.
But we would be willing to reduce the personnel and operating costs, which are $228,000 and $176,380. And then that would turn that into a one-time rather than an annual application with personnel.
Glenn?
Thank you.
Glenn, at some point, I have a group that I asked to be here today. Are we still calling them up to?
Absolutely. If they're speaking to,
whenever
clarification issues, we'd be happy to.
Clarification, yes.
Go ahead, Ernie.
I'd like to ask Palo Verde Fire Department to come up here. And the reason that we're asking you up here is you put in for matching funds, and my understanding that the bottom line that you want to end up with is $60,000, and you've already put together some funding toward that.
So
Thank
we're
you.
asking for matching funds because we're still going to try and get some money from Humboldt Area Foundation. Way back in 2014, we actually identified the need for a new truck and reached out to Humboldt Area Foundation. I'd given them a grant proposal and everything at the time, but they were not able to provide the full $60,000. They said, hopefully, possibly, they might be able to do as much as 10 if we found other sources. That's why I'm here today.
Okay, that's what a matching fund usually means. We'll come up with 25 and you'll come up with 25. So the bottom line of what you need is $60,000 for a truck, and you have already raised and have in your pocket how much?
10,000.
You have 10 right now.
Yes.
So if you had 50,000 more, you could have a brand new truck?
Yep. yet.
None of that would go to...
It would not be a brand-new truck, just
Well,
pointing that out. It would be a new, used truck. It would be a very great upgrade from our 1978 Quick Attack truck that is our primary response vehicle right now, but it would not be a new truck.
it would be replacing the truck that caught fire in the bridge in the middle of a...
No, that is a water tender vehicle, not our primary response.
Oh, great,
vehicle.
okay.
And it's already been repaired through insurance.
So the bottom line is whatever you get, you might be able to get matching funds for if we end up giving you, like, say, 3,000, you might end up getting another 3,000 somewhere plus the 10 you already have, and...
So no matter whether you give us funding or not, we will be applying for match funds through Humboldt Area Foundation. I don't know that they will still be able to give them. As I talked to them in 2014, and they said $5,000 or $10,000 possibly they might be able to do through two different options for a grant proposal, but they did not say definitely yes, so we would have to put in for that as well.
The other things I have to ask might have to do with the chief. I was wanting to know how, if you have a fire and you respond to the fire, how long is it before you get a backup in your area?
It's usually, we're about 30 to 45 minutes ahead of CAL FIRE or Alden Point Station that come out of their areas. Sometimes it can be up to an hour. And we've had a couple instances, if we had not been there, the fire would have spread much, much farther.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. We probably would have lost the New Harris General Store. During the lightning strike series, CAL FIRE did not respond to our area at all. So that is also a situation for us. We were usually the last ones to get served when there are big situations.
And how far away are you from medical backup?
We are at least an hour away. Our response area is about an hour and a half from one side to the other side. We cover about 115 square miles. Ambulance can be up to 2 hours away depending on where they're coming from or where it is in our response area, and that's also the case with law enforcement. It can be up to 2 hours away for us, and we are very critical in helping the ambulance and law enforcement finding these scenes and these houses where these emergencies are happening. We're the only people out there who are available to assist.
Kind of like Coupah, they don't have addresses.
Right. And one other thing about our call volume, it may not look big, but people in our area do not call unless it's really, really bad. We don't.
I understand.
Most people get put in their friends' or family's car and brought to the emergency room.
Yeah.
When people call 911 in our area, it's usually pretty serious, and I can definitely contest there'd be some people in our area who would not be alive today if it were not for the first responders of our department. We have about 15 first responders and about 15 wildland firefighters that we keep trained up. We do helicopter training each year because we realize the value of life flight. We do it with CAL FIRE and with Reach helicopters. We do this about every year because we realize ambulances can be 2 hours away for us.
I probably understand better than most people in southern Humboldt how far away you are from help, and the rescues and everything else you do out there is critical in that first hour for medical, and a fire can get going pretty good in a half hour, can't it?
Yes, it can. And our 40-year-old Quick Attack has really gotten slow. We're losing the transmission on it. We need to replace this vehicle if we're going to continue to provide the services that we have been to our community out there.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to ask you to become more involved with the Chiefs Association meetings.
I have already expressed that intent to a number of people, and I will start attending the Northern Humboldt Fire Chiefs Association. I've been the treasurer of Southern Humboldt now for 4 years now. I've been chief out there in my area for about 8 years now.
Thank you.
So I will make the effort and make the 2-hour drive to.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'll make it to Orleans, guys. That's a long haul. I'll do Eureka and Arcata and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And I'd like to say you do a very good job out there, and I appreciate you. I'm maybe stepping out of my place here, but I understand the critical importance of your department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just had a quick question. Did you guys run this request through the Fire Chiefs Association? Because they have their...
I did. I contacted Dale with Samoa Fire at the end, right around the new year, and I told him what our needs were, which were basically fire shelters. Everything else we're pretty well covered for. We do need to update our old fire shelters, and I mentioned to him that we do need a new Quick Attack, and I've heard nothing back from Dale with Samoa Fire, nothing at all from him. So I assume that we weren't in the mix to get a new apparatus. I worked with Brian Anderson for many years, and he helped get us our new turnouts and SCBAs. We received about $40,000 of Measure Z equipment when it first came out, and that's all we've ever received from the county.
So if there's any way you guys can even give us 20 or 30 or 40,000 bucks, anything to get a new quick attack, we'll keep it going and we'll use it. I guarantee you that.
I have a question.
Thank you.
And I might be stepping out of line here, and I'm new. Have we ever thought, because this is happening with our application too, you know, why we came in separate and them not understanding that the schools are not protected and because of the fire hoses. But have we ever thought about rotating the fire chief position among the districts?
Well-
So that there's fair representation?
Let me speak about my level of knowledge. The Fire Chiefs Association is a voluntary group. There is a northern section and a Humboldt and a southern section that actually meet separately and so on. Many members of the southern group are also members of the northern group, but not all. Mr. McDonald, why don't you come forward, please, here. My understanding is that any agency, volunteer or paid, or a combination thereof, is eligible to be part of the association, but I'll let Chief McDonald speak to it a little, because it's been 10 years since I've played in that arena, so.
You are absolutely correct. So the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association represents all fire agencies in the county. Southern Humboldt has their own group that's under our, essentially our tax ID number. So is a couple other components. The County Chiefs Training Officers Association, all are part of ours. So all agencies are invited to participate. The needs assessment, we just updated the email list. I believe you're on it. To get all of that information back from everybody in the county so that we can represent 40
Okay, I think
some
I've
agencies.
been misunderstood here because I know our volunteer chief has spoke up about the fire chief. I'm talking about the seat here.
The what?
The fire
Well-
chief seat here. Have we
By the ordinance language,
ever thought about rotating it fairly amongst
Okay.
districts?
by the ordinance language, the Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association is recognized as the de facto representative for the fire agencies. The Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association chooses their representative, and in fact, Brian Anderson of Redway was the representative for the last 4 years. Sean he's new this year as well, so it does in fact rotate. That decision is delegated, I guess you would say, to the Fire Chiefs Association because the position is a Fire Chiefs Association position as opposed to the position of a specific entity.
I was just wondering, so the other voices are heard, like the smaller.
Correct, and Sean volunteered to represent the association, and he comes back to us. It's not his opinion that he's given, it's our association spoken through.
Yeah, I would think of him as a conduit, quite frankly. Okay. Any other party like to speak to a clarification of an issue?
Mr. Chair?
Captain Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reference to Sheriff Hansel's request for anybody that is willing to modify their applications, in reference to our application number 11 for the City of Eureka Police Department, Humboldt Bay Fire, and our radio project, this is a one-time request for funding. I understand the position the county and the board is in. We are going to have to fund the second part of the console, the first phase, the console installation, sooner than later. So I am willing to remove the $170,000 request for the second phase of the console installation. Just understand that the infrastructure portion of this request is vital to this overall project. It only covers 25% of the overall rehaul of our entire radio system to get us to P25 compliant, but I will be willing to make that reduction in our application, sir.
Thank you. Any other discussion items or clarification of applications?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question for the Palo Verde Fire Department. Yes, sir, I'm curious, how long did it take you to raise the $10,000?
About 1 year. We have a very large community support in our area, and they hold a fundraiser once a month. We do about 8, 9, or 10 of them a year. They raise about $1,000 at each one. I don't have any part to do with it. It's all community supported, and people out there who want to realize that we need to have a local fire department for when things get really, really bad.
Thank you. My second question was going to be, and I think you kind of already answered this, how much do you anticipate to raise at the barbecue this year? In your application, you talk about a barbecue and that being your primary fundraiser, and it sounds like you have more sporadic, not sporadic, but
I can tell you
once throughout the year.
Our operating costs are about $20,000 a year. We get about half of that from people who donate money and the other half from our fundraisers. That goes to workman's comp and it also goes to our insurance. That leaves us about $10,000 left over each year for equipment maintenance, replacing equipment, training, and buying tires and all that sorts of wonderful things. So we operate at about $20,000 a year, to give you an idea of our department.
Thank you.
I'm Jasmine Finley, and by the way, I'm the fundraising coordinator. So I wanted to just step in here and let you guys know that while we're trying to fundraise for a quick attack truck, it's very difficult to keep our normal operating costs going at the same time. And so doing that, collecting $10,000, asking the public for that specific fund last year, has limited what we have coming in just for normal operating costs. So we have to think about that with future fundraising and what we will really ask for from the community, and we have to think about the economy, which, as everyone knows, is not in a great place.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Okay. Thank you. Any other committee members have clarification issues? Anyone from the public like to speak to clarification of an application? Not advocacy, but clarification.
Yes, application 42 for Southern Trinity Health Services. I'm not sure which ones you were asking for a reduction for, but where application 42, we could reduce down the $13,728 for employee benefits and find that money elsewhere if that helped.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Down by that much or down two?
Could you clarify the numbers for the staff again, please?
42, Southern Trinity Area Rescue.
You're reducing it how much?
By the $13,728 listed for full-time benefits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to clarification issues?
Yeah, my name is Dan Berman. I'm here for the City of Trinidad. I guess I'd like to just make sure if there's any questions I can answer. We did receive communication from the administrative office that you guys may have questions for us, I think specifically about other alternate funding sources for previously funded positions was what it said. So I can speak to that, or if someone has a specific question. So the city funds a full-time deputy through the sheriff's office. Like the city of Blue Lake, Trinidad contracts with the sheriff's office for our law enforcement services. That's a partnership that has worked extremely well, I think, for both parties. The city funds one position, full-time position, which is 4 days a week, through our general fund and through state funding that all cities receive specifically for law enforcement, the COPS grants. We have requested through Measure Z an additional position each year in the past, and we've been funded for half a position. We've been sharing a deputy with the city of Blue Lake. That's what we're requesting this time as well. I'd like to thank the committee for accepting our application at their last meeting. In terms of alternate funding sources, I mean, like every city, you know, the general fund has many demands on it. We are funding a full-time deputy with our general fund right now. We're asking for $75,000, which is the cost of half of one of our contracted deputies for the sheriff's office. That will get us to 6 days a week having a deputy available in Trinidad. And again, I'd like to emphasize that while this is a grant to the city turns around and gives 100% of the money back to the sheriff's office to fund a deputy position, and that this deputy, under the way the city has approached it, is we have that deputy serving not just within the city limits, but the greater area surrounding Trinidad, which relieves a lot of pressure from the McKinleyville station to cover a very wide area. If there's any specific questions about alternate funding, I guess the only other thing I'd mention is that the Trinidad Rancheria partners with the city on many important issues. They have not been helping us with law enforcement funding recently, but I know they are pursuing their own independent agreement with the sheriff's office. I don't believe they have a Measure Z application in, but that may be helpful in the future in Trinidad if they can help also contract with the sheriff's office for a deputy, but that has not yet come to pass.
Thank you. Okay. I think we're at the point. Do you have a question, Ginger? Okay. An initial ranking process is necessary, and I think it's time, unless there's any other clarification questions, that we begin. My suggestion is that we take the revised roster provided by staff in your agenda package this time, and begin with those that had the highest number. What we would ask you to do is vote either Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 on each application. Tier 1 being the highest priority, Tier 3 being the lowest priority. That would allow staff then to tabulate the general feeling of the committee as far as ranking these proposals is concerned. And it's pretty clear to me that if there is the normal distribution, even within Tier 1, we're going to have to do some further cutting and prioritization and so on. So rather than try to get into a highly detailed prioritization process before we have the tier aspect of it, my suggestion is that we do simply a Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and then we can go back and take a look at Tier 1 and Tier 2, potentially even some of Tier 3, and see where we can go with the money that's available. So I will go through that list in sequence and ask each committee member to vote either Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3. Again, Tier 1 being the highest priority, and the staff will tabulate those, and then maybe we'll take a 5-minute break after we go through that process, let them get that list restructured, and then we can take a look at the hard process of matching the amount of money available to those requests, because I have no doubt that they will exceed the funding available. Any questions about that process?
Mr. Chairman, and you're going to say all that vote Tier 1 raise their hand, should you go down the line like that?
Yes. Okay.
Chair, for clarification, after you vote on each item, you guys are going to be taking public comment on each application?
I think that's appropriate, yeah. We've talked about transparency, and if we're going to, walk the walk, I think we need to. The question in my mind, quite frankly, is whether the public comment should come before the vote, which makes more sense to me. So my thought process is that I would ask for very limited comments about each specific application, simply because time pressures, what else we wanted to make has already been made. Time and use material, returning input, but we have limited time, and we could easily exhaust with comments on one particular. I just ask that you be concise, if you would, please.
And we normally do 3-minute public comment. Are you guys going to be doing 3 minutes or 2 minutes? For public comment?
I was going to limit it, but the suggestion of the committee was that we keep it at 3, so I think we'll give that a try to start with and see how it goes.
I need 30 seconds again. Know what I did wrong.
Glenn?
I would suggest that your suggestion, your query was to have the comments before the vote.
Yes.
Yeah, as each item is called, each group that wanted to comment would come up, then we'd move to the next one.
Yes.
I agree.
Okay, so here we go. First application based on the revised document provided to you by the staff, City of Eureka Police Department, Humboldt Fire Dispatch. Any member of the public application? Okay, seeing none. All members 1, please raise your hand. Tier 2. Tier 3.
Did we call it that's voting for Sean today?
There is no alternate. We have a quorum, which is my understanding.
And when we go through the voting, can we just ask to pull them up for just a few while we do it again? We're trying hard.
Okay, let's
exchange photos, videos, reports. They'd be able to access our reports, and they would also be able to access the Sheriff's Department, Eureka Police Department, Riedel Police Department, and the whole gamut. So they're the only one left in Humboldt County that doesn't have RIMS. So again, it's not my application. I did write a letter of support, but he did call me. He's out of state, and he asked me to speak on his behalf.
Thank you. Anyone else on application 14, City of Ferndale? Okay, all those in favor, application 14, Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay, application 15B. This is to maintain the SRO officer in Fortuna. Anyone like to speak to this from the public?
Tammy Trent, City of Fortuna. I just wanted to clarify that Southern Humboldt, because you were talking about keeping it secret, Southern Humboldt has only asked for just a few things through, I think there's 6 applications for the whole south of the county, totaling, if everybody was funded, their full amount would be $556,000, so that's not a large portion of that. And I just wanted to introduce our school resource officer. She's here to tell you a little bit about, she doesn't just work Fortuna, she works the whole Ear River Valley. So she's going to give you an idea of the schools that she works in, some of what she does. And as the kids know her, Officer Lindsay.
Oh, clarify, I was just trying to do my homework of where the bulk of the money was going each year. You know, percentage-wise, it wasn't, but I clicked on the wrong link for my homework.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, bear with me. I wrote some stuff down before I came in. So I want to tell you about a young man that I met from Eureka.
Could you move your microphone up?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to tell you about a young man that I met from Eureka. My first year as SRO, this young man came to a county classroom in the Eel River Valley. He was clearly in some sort of crisis. He came to school agitated and would daily disrupt his class. He consistently reminded me of how he did not like law enforcement due to his past negative interactions with law enforcement. Within the first year, I was able to build a positive relationship with him. He would ask for me when he was having a bad day, and we would find outlets for his anxiety. This year is my second year as SRO, and I found out that this young man was placed into foster care. One of his aides reached out to me because this young man was playing football and he had no cleats. The cleats he had were 2 sizes too small, and he could not afford to buy any new ones. His teachers were looking for donations to buy him proper fitting cleats. Finding a size 15 triple E was not an easy task. I reached out to the company Under Armour and explained the situation. Under Armour did not hesitate and was kind enough to donate some cleats. With the help of others, I was able to make a difference in this young man's life and make him feel important. Sorry. As you can see, my position as SRO is very important to me. I feel like I can reach these kids, and it's key for these kids as they're growing up to have a positive mentor and a positive interaction with law enforcement, because a lot of the stuff that they get is not, it's negative. And this is just one story of the thousands of kids that I work with and I reach with. Last week I was in Ferndale. Earlier this week I was in Rio Dell. Next week I plan on being out in Bridgeville. So I am all over the place. I am one person covering a very large area. So I may not get out to these county schools as frequently as I'd like to, but if I can make this kind of an impact on just one student from each school, I am doing my job.
Thank you. Okay, committee position 15B, the SRO officer for Fortuna, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3.
Slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
Too speedy?
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, next is application 16, City of Rio Dell, clerical support position. Anybody like to speak on behalf of this application?
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Connor. I'm the Chief of the Rio Dell Police Department. As you're probably aware, Rio Dell is a small police department and requires us to be jacks of all trades, masters of none, or at least very few. The clerical position that's funded by Measure Z is our only clerical position. As is the rest of us, she does a multitude of different things. If that position was no longer available, it would require police officers, mainly myself, to fulfill her duties. So rather than out being on patrol, which unlike most other chiefs in Humboldt County, I do on a regular basis, I would be processing background check reports for the Sheriff's Department because they always seem to be hiring people in great numbers. The other clerical duties that she does, answering the phone, animal control, babysitting when we have children in the office, a host of things that most people don't realize that she does. So I'm asking again that you continue to fund this position, at least until we can find funds from another source to take over. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, committee members, this is application 16, City of Rio Dell, clerical support position, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay. Application 47, City of Trinidad, a half-time deputy sheriff position. Anybody like to speak on behalf of this application? Seeing none. Those favoring Tier 1 for application 47? Tier 2? Tier 1, please. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay. Next, Humboldt County Fire Chiefs Association, the aggregate application on behalf of the county fire departments. Anybody like to speak to this from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor of Tier 1 support? Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay, application 30B, Humboldt County Public Works. This is the application for the costs of hazardous materials and illegal dump site removal. Anybody like to speak on behalf of this from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor of Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay, application 29, Humboldt County Public Works, roadway clearing in Resort District 1. Anyone like to speak on behalf of this application? Please approach the mic.
Cheryl Anthony from Shelter Cove.
Could you get a little closer to the mic so we could hear you, please?
Sure. Cheryl Anthony from Shelter Cove Fire. I'm sorry. I'm not sure which of the...
We're on application 29. This is the county's application for road clearing and strategic improvements on the roadways in Shelter Cove.
Our roads are in really terrible shape like everybody else's, but most of all, we aren't able to get our emergency vehicles down the roads, and so we're asking for money to help us clear the roads and make them more fire safe so that rural fire department protection and ambulance service and 911 emergency response can get through. And we'd also like to make sure that there are evacuation routes that people can get through. Everything is overgrown, and we are working along with RID, CAL FIRE, and the county roads, and all of our residents are being encouraged to help clear everything from their homes to the road so that everything will be clearer. And we're having a chipping program that will be sponsored by the fire department and RID so that people can put things at the roadside and the chipper will come along and get rid of it so that it will be more safe.
Thank you. Next.
Tom Matson, Director of Public Works. I want to reiterate that this is a cooperative endeavor between the RID and the county. When we join together, we do much better, and it really jumpstarts our future brush cutting, fire lane projects. But Shelter Cove, there's one road in, one road out. If that road is closed down due to fire, we have severe repercussions, and I highly recommend you support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I make a comment to Tom? That's a half a road in and a half a road out, as I recall.
Okay, in regard to application 29, the RID Humboldt County Public Works roadway clearing project, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, application 45, the ambulance, continuation of ambulance service in the Willow Creek service area. Anybody like to speak to this application from the public?
I would like to, please. Hi, I'm Mary Benedict from Kamau Medical Center, and we operate the Willow Creek ambulance base. I was hoping just to take a few minutes and kind of go back into history for the new committee members. But when we started this process of obtaining Measure Z funds, the county was to establish or look into being able to tax in the area in order to support the service. And I think it was either last year or the year before, the county staff said that wasn't a possibility for whatever reason. And so, you know, I just kind of wanted to remind people that's kind of how we got started. The Hoopa Valley Tribe, or Kamau Medical Center, has supported the ambulance service in Willow Creek since its inception, and just more recently, in the last 4 years, have been supported by Measure Z funds in the county. It is a county responsibility to provide the service, but we're happy to partner with the county and continue to provide that service. I wanted to remind the committee that we have returned funds or not taken funds that were actually allocated to us, resulting in a savings and an improvement in our billing procedures. But there is a large increase in our budget this year, and that's a result of trying to retain the paramedics for our area. We did have to give them an increase this last year, in addition to group health insurance increases. And so I just wanted to say, even though our amount is much larger than we normally have requested, that's the only way we can retain the paramedics. Other agencies are offering sign-on bonuses for paramedics, and we're trying to hang on to the ones that we have. In addition to that, EMTs that are part of our program, we support them in going to become a paramedic in hopes that they'll continue to work in our area as a paramedic. And so I wanted to mention that as well. We continue to look for funding through Indian Health Service. Without every year we make that request to them, even though they don't provide any funding. We continue to look for that. And so I just ask you to please consider the requests that we've made. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Okay, in regards to application 45, the Willow Creek Ambulance Service, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, application 36, the Orleans Community Services District, construction of a new fire structure. Anyone like to speak to this on behalf of the public?
Chair, before you guys vote on this item, I would just like to call to attention that it is just a couple minutes before 4 o'clock. And so in order to continue voting, if you guys want to continue down the list, that'll need to be a motion made by your committee. Otherwise, the meeting will need to end at 4 o'clock because that's the way that it was noticed.
Then the chair would make one request to the county. Could we have the clock corrected to the daylight savings time before the next meeting? Because I'm thinking we did pretty good. We got an hour left.
2 minutes to 4.
Your point well taken.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is application 36. I'm Penny Eckert, Orleans Community Services District. Just wanted to add a point of clarification. I'd love to stand up here and advocate, but the clarification is that we're a bake sale fire department. We have no other income. Like Palo Verde, we fundraise for our regular supplies. We come to you with about $178,000 of sweat equity and donations already put into this. We have a donated parcel of land. Our engineer, $45,000 worth of work. We've put $7,000 of our own cash and put over 700 hours of sweat equity work, including 400 hours of donated heavy equipment time. Whitson Plumbing, TT Construction, various organizations that are out there trying to make a living took time and brought their equipment and helped us. So we've had tremendous community support for this. And this is something that is a one-time request, and it will serve not just our community, which is, as you know, is both Karuk and non-tribal members. We serve down into Wichpec. We serve the Yurok tribe as well as the other people who live there. This is a one-time request, and it will serve not only our communities, but it will provide a marvelous place for us to have a command center for any kind of incident that occurs. The CHP works with us when there's an over-the-bank emergency. The sheriff works with us when there's a search and rescue. We work with CAL FIRE when there's a large fire with the Forest Service. This will provide a service for all of these public responders, not just for us. Just want to say thank you.
You need to make a motion.
Let's get through this one first. Were you wanting to speak, sir? Okay. You did a great job. She didn't fall or anything. Okay, in reference to application 36, the Orleans Community Services District, all those Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay, staff has kindly pointed out that we are at our normal time limit, so The chair would entertain discussion of, do we want to extend, or do we want to terminate the meeting and continue next week? What's the pleasure of the
We
committee?
extend.
I second the move, and are we going to go into discussion?
Well, extend for, maybe you can help me with a little time, what timeline are you proposing?
Laura, you
Laura.
made the motion.
Well, how about extend to 4:40, if necessary?
Is second comfortable with 4:40?
In
Another
deference
40
to the
minutes?
county staff, what time would you give us to, I see people out there that have driven 2-3 hours to be here, is what I'm saying. And for county staff, but I also feel sorry for a lot of people out there, and I think we ought to extend some reasonable point, not to be ridiculous. Do you have any suggestions?
I think that we can go until 5, and then if we hit 5 o'clock, then we can entertain another motion, depending where we're at in the application process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to help us logistically, by a show of hands in the audience, those of you who have driven more than 30 miles in anticipation of speaking on one of these proposals, please raise your hand. Okay, half a dozen, so on. I think I'd like to do, let's go a half hour under this, and then at the half hour mark, I'd have staff identify who those parties are that have driven long, to consider them out of sequence to try to get their travel time. Is that acceptable to the committee?
The motion on the 440.
Yeah.
I like your suggestion, do that by order of the chair, by consensus.
Yeah, I think the order is something we can handle. So let's deal with the motion to extend first of all, because if we don't extend, it's moot.
I want to amend the motion.
Okay,
I will withdraw my original motion and that we authorize going till 5 o'clock.
Okay, is there a
I
second?
want to amend it with saying, let's take a 5-minute break now.
Okay, let's deal with the extension first, and then I'm happy to. So is there a second on the motion to extend till 5 o'clock?
Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? Go
I
ahead.
have one challenge. I do have childcare issues and other business issues that are certainly time sensitive, and so that's something that I have to be aware of.
Okay. So let's see, just
too-
help me,
sorry. I
if the
too-
staff would help me, if we were to lose one member, we still have a quorum with or without alternates?
I have a tribal council meeting as well this evening,
Okay.
so and then I have a drive back, an hour, 20 minutes.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
like to offer 4:30 as a alternative.
Okay. Let's deal with the motion in a second, unless you want to offer a formal amendment, just by way of process. All those in favor of extending to 5, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, now the chair would entertain a new motion, if someone would like to make one, about modifying that.
Let's work the process and get through as much as we can. Let's
Okay.
do this.
Go till 4:30? No?
Well, as far as we can. And then
Yeah.
we'll-
If you want 4:30, we'd need a formal motion and a second to,
I would like to make a motion to go to 4:30.
Okay,
And
is-
just keep going.
is there a second?
I second.
Okay. Motion and a second that we modify the extension time till 4:30. Any discussion? Public comment technically, but
Yes.
you probably don't want to get in the middle of our laundry, I would imagine. Okay, all those in favor of modifying the time extension till 4:30, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, the motion dies, so we will extend till 5. If the members need to absent themselves, I apologize for that. I honestly feel badly about changing the composition during the voting process, but the parliamentary process is what it is, so we will proceed then. Rich, you would like a 5-minute adjournment, I understood? If we're going to 4:30, would you still like that?
I would like it now.
Okay, the chair will put us in recess for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 4:09 by my watch. Take their seats so we can reconvene, please. Where's Ernie at?
You got him.
I'm going to reconvene the meeting at 4:09. What I would do, I think in consideration of those who had long travel distances, if you have long travel distances, say more than 30 miles, and you're here to support a particular application, would you please line up at the podium? And what I'd like to do is take these out of numerical sequence, and we'll try to consider them in the order of those individuals who have gone long distances here to speak. So if you've driven a distance and would like to speak to an application, please join the line.
Tell them to be sure to get their numbers so we can know where they are.
We'll find out, yeah. Okay, please approach the microphone. Okay, your name and what application you're speaking to?
Cheryl Anthony, I'm number 40.
Number 40, okay.
And it is about sirens. We are using sirens in Shelter Cove because we have no cell service and we have no law enforcement, so we need everything we can do to warn people if we have a wildfire heading our way, or a tsunami, or whatever it is. And we have 2 sirens up right now. We tested them yesterday. And we need to have more sirens to go along the top of the cove so that we can warn them. We also have the ability to talk to people and tell them what it is that we are asking them to evacuate, which direction to go to. In other words, if it's a wildfire, it would probably be head to the lighthouse, and if it's a tsunami, head uphill.
Okay.
And wildfires have a very bad history in Shelter Cove because in the 1970s, the Finley fire took out 10,000 acres in one day. And that could happen at any time now because after all the fires that we've had, they seeded Doug firs all over the place and they're growing wall to wall. And we're trying to get rid of them, but it's like so dangerous as far as fire safety. It's just a terrible situation. We've had approximately 15 wildfires in Shelter Cove every year. The fire department has been able to get them out, usually without getting any bad damage, except for our last one was in the horse fire at the King Range area. And it took us about a week to get it out completely with the help of CAL FIRE and every other department around us. But as you know, we're at the end of the road, and we don't have anybody to the west of us or the north or the south. So if we get any help at all, it's got to come from other places.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else speaking to application 40? Okay, committee members, application 40, the tsunami sirens in Shelter Cove, Tier 1.
Mr. Chair, will there be an alternate assigned for?
Not at this point. We still have a quorum of the normal member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go back. Item 40, the tsunami sirens in Shelter Cove, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, next party approach and let us know which application you're speaking to, please.
I want to speak on 2 applications. One of them is Southern Humboldt Amateur Radio Club. They asked me.
Okay, let's just give us a second to identify which one here.
So that's 41.
Number 41, okay.
41, sorry. They received an email to have somebody present, and their vice president who filed the application wasn't able to, so I offered to come here and speak about that if there's any questions about it. It's for a repeater up on Grasshopper Peak. It's a hard-to-reach area. Apparently, it is out right now, so they're waiting for better weather. They can only go up there when the roads are dry. And it is a repeater, a ham radio, amateur radio repeater that's used. It's all in the application.
Okay, thank you.
For various reasons.
Just hold your position for a second. We'll let the committee vote on that particular one. Okay, we're talking about application 41 for the equipment requested by the Southern Humboldt Amateur Radio Club, Tier 1. Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay, the second application you'd like to speak to?
That's 31 for KMUD for backup generators.
Okay, the KMUD?
KMUD.
Okay.
And it's really hard for us to get funding these days. We're in a membership drive right now, and that's just for general operation. And we've been on the air for 2 weeks and a couple days, I think, asking for money, and tomorrow is the last day, and we were asking for 70,000, and I think as of this morning we were around $50,000. So there's not a whole lot of extra money. So anything you could give would be great. We could negotiate if there's not enough money and prioritize. So we'd be grateful for anything that could be passed on our way for one of these projects, if not the whole package.
Thank you. Okay. Committee members, this is application 31, the KMUD equipment purchase, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, next speaker, come forward, please.
Chair, really quickly, Ms. Orcutt missed the vote on the prior application, application number 40. If you guys wanted to go back and count her vote.
Okay.
It's okay. Oh, okay.
Well, let me explain why it's important.
Okay, just go.
There's a weighting issue. If we vote with different numbers of people at different time, it changes the relative weighting of application scoring, which could become very problematic. So if you don't mind, could you record a vote on that element? The tsunami sirens in Shelter Cove? Okay. Thank you, staff. You want to come forward? Identify which application you're speaking to?
Yeah, I'm speaking to application number 37.
Okay.
It's the Palo Verde Volunteer Fire Department's quick attack truck funding. My name's Carl Alexander Hulbert, and I've been a Southern Humboldt resident for 10 years and a volunteer firefighter for the last 7. I love this county with a passion, and the most meaningful part of living here for me has been responding to the Palo Verde Volunteer Fire Department's calls. Living in an extremely rural area, it's easy to feel like you're on your own and it's you against the world, but nothing cuts through that illusion quicker than being alerted of an emergency in my neighborhood that I can be of service on. When responding in an area with outside help as far away as it is in our area, minutes count, and to be blunt, I feel like the 40-plus year truck that we're working with as a department leaves me less than confident in my ability to respond with reliability and speed. Allowing a medical situation or fire to get out of control would be a tragedy for our community and the county at large. Funding for a new truck would go a long way towards helping our community continue protecting ourselves from ourselves. And I'll finish by saying I understand the strain that the budget has put you guys under, and I appreciate the work you're doing on behalf of our county. I hope that you take our request into consideration, and thank you very much for your time.
Okay. All right, this is application 37 on behalf of the Palo Verde Fire Department for equipment purchase. Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3? Anyone else who's traveled a distance who would like to speak to one of these applications? Please identify which application you're speaking to.
Hello and thank you. Number 20. 2 tribal police officers or wardens. The Hoopa Valley Reservation, or what we call, now, first of all, thank you very much for hearing us, and thank you all here for everything that you do for our people and keeping us safe and protecting us. The Hoopa Valley Reservation, what we call is Nakninaway, means where trail returns. It's the largest reservation in California. We nearly have a 100,000 acre reservation. Our beautiful river, Trinity River, splits our 12 plus square mile reservation, and 2 in our valley sits. On both sides of the valley, our mountains come through, are above us, and our old trails, which are now roads, come through into our valley. With what the chief was saying earlier, nearly a couple years ago, and you could attest to, our police force was down to a couple officers. And we've rebuilt it now to nearly 10 officers, which includes what he was mentioning earlier, is 5% of our reservation, our highway system in our valley is protected with our police officers, but nearly 90,000, 95,000 acres is unprotected. So this would go, these two officers, these wardens would go to helping our community in our area protect from, things and so forth from, people coming from outside. We're also working and collaborating with Six Rivers National Forest to enlarge our ancestral territory, which our ancestral territory is nearly 3 times large as 100,000 acres. It goes to Burnt Ranch to Berry Summit. So we'd be also assisting them in our ancestral territories. And with the amount of officers that we have, we're just unable to get up in our hills. From one side to a reservation to another is nearly 2 hours. So this would assist us in the grow to expand our warden operation. So again, I thank you for your time, and I thank all of you for what you've done.
Thank you. Okay, this is in regard to application 20, the Hoopa Valley Tribal Police request for 2 positions. Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, anyone else who's traveled a distance and would like to speak to any of the applications? Okay, seeing none, I believe we're now with the...
I would like to speak on behalf of our Chief of Police on application 19. He had sent a message and he wanted to participate by phone. And so I can kind of read the text that he had sent me. Yes, the fire chief.
Could you pull your microphone in so we could hear
The
you?
fire chief. We had kind of talked with with some of the staff and Sean after he opposed the application. He vocally opposed the application in the last meeting where we had talked about, I don't think that he didn't quite understand that it wasn't a wildland fire issue, but more of a WUI issue and a fire issue. So when these other applications are coming through to ask for the road clearing and the maintenance and the fire debris that typically county road services provide, they don't provide that in our area. So we have to take care of that. And we live in a different, the hazardous fuel program is not funded by the fire department. It is administered, as part of our area and our organization in the county. And we work off special appropriations and grants. That's why it's not part of this fire chief's request, because it does not fit. It is for hazardous fuels reduction, equipment, radios, personnel protective equipment, and a vehicle. Hoopa is an at-risk community. They're listed with a CAL FIRE assessment in 2001 in the Federal Register. We are extreme risk of catastrophic fire similar to the car fire and the camp fire. We desperately need this request to expedite any complete hazardous fuel reduction projects. And I think that it's also important to note that during the government shutdown that none of our burn plans were processed. So we are not able to do, we usually try to do traditional burning, and we're not able to do any burning this year because the projects weren't, the applications weren't okay. So all the fire from the Mill Creek fire and the fuels are all stacked up there, and it's going to be a pretty bad fire season for us and summer. So I'm not sure the impacts to the county, but it will be health-wise, as the people will have to come into the hospital, and the elders, will have to be placed out of the fire area. Any questions? Do you guys have any questions to that? Is there any other questions from the Fire Association? Yeah. And I'm pinch hitting here, I'm sorry, but there was no way for him to participate by phone.
Ray Snowberger, Blue Lake Fire. The only question I had is, I'm sure Rod's aware of the BIA hazard fuel mitigation plan that is administered through BIA, correct?
We were not okayed for any of the, for the plans.
Why would that be?
Through the government shutdown. the BIA was shut down.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're now voting in reference to application number 19, the Hoopa Fire Department OES, for purchase of equipment and basically a WUI situation. Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3?
6.
Okay. Given the change in order, I believe now we're at application number 2, AJ's Transitional Living, on the top of the second page. Anyone here like to speak to that application?
I think we're on 2, number 2.
My name is Ginger Olson. I'm a registered nurse and a PhD. I am educated and certified and licensed in every phase of drug treatment. At this time, I also provide 2 clean and sober houses, which are alternately called transition houses. That's 2 out of 12 in the county area. AJ's is one of those 12. Every one of us is able to, we are well-funded. We fund ourselves. We are full to capacity. Every single transitional house is continuously full. We are paid for every client who comes in there. The pay ranges from $300 a month to $500 a month for each client. The funding comes from general relief, Social Security, personal funds, probation, Betty Chin. It comes from any person who is trying to get housing for people. It is not necessary to get funding from anyone outside. We are all able to take care of ourselves. The main reason I'm talking against this has to do with how it impacts drug treatment. To give money to drug treatment, both federally and by state, requires licensure, certification, has rulings like this that must be met for any kind of drug treatment given to individuals. Interns cannot intern under an unlicensed or uncertified agency. Transitional houses are not licensed or certified. We have 4 treatment programs in Humboldt County, 3 of which are supported by the county very badly. They are going under because they don't have the people they need. So they're not paid enough to take care of them. They are on the verge of getting Medi-Cal funding, but they may go under before that happens. And for a transitional house to take money away from this is, I can't think how bad it is. It's immoral. So I really ask you to vote against AJ's transitional housing.
Okay. I would imagine there's a rebuttal.
Art Wilson, AJ's Living. And we are not a transitional house. We're a supported living house. Out of the 12 facilities that Ms. Olson was mentioning, we're the only one that provides full service. We transport our clients to every appointment they need to get to. We have 3 in-house meetings a week. The Humboldt County Board of Supervisors recognizes AJ's Living as an SUD recovery house. We're not a transitional living facility. When we first started out, that's what we thought we were going to be, and it metamorphosized into much more than that. We have turned into an absolutely treatment facility, much.
Go ahead, sir, you have the microphone.
I'm all confused now. We take our clients to doctor's appointments. We take them to all of the county appointments. We take them to job interviews. We take them to the unemployment development department, to things like that. We take them to aftercare to some of these drug facilities. So I submit to you that we are not a transitional living facility, and that I was going to say something else, but there was yelling and I got confused. So thank you, guys.
Janine Wilson, Executive Director of AJ's Living. And I think what he was trying to say is that we emphasize the continuum of care, and that is what's not happening in a lot of the other ones that we are trying to promote and we're trying to model. And that's why we're calling us treatment, in the sense that after they go through a detox, then we're the next, or the detox or a treatment facility, then we're the next logical model, because we allow up to 2 years of people residing in this facility on the continuum of care, because we know that people cannot stay sober with just a 30-day treatment program. The majority cannot. They need continuum of care. And that is what we are emphasizing.
Thank you. Okay, we're voting now on AJ's Transitional Living, application number 2. Tier 1 votes? Tier 2 votes? Tier 3 votes? Okay. Application number 7, City of Arcata, the SRO and JDC positions. Anyone for the audience like to speak to that?
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Chief. We are now going to be changing the number system because one of our members left.
Okay.
So as we vote, people are going to get less, value because there's one less vote to everything.
So these votes are not binding.
I know, but
These votes are to be used as guides for your committee in judging the overall value of the applications.
Okay, I understand that, but it's, people in the audience going, oh my God, and I'm doing that same thing. We want
You're
to.
speaking to a weighting issue of the votes. Yeah, we're talking about a weighting issue.
Yeah, and
WEIGH,
when he leaves, then it's really going to be, I understand we want to finish, but
Yeah.
then how do you, we're only going to take the top 10 or the top 15?
So
You-
let me discuss real briefly. I think what Ginger's alluding to is, once we lose a vote, we have a weighting issue in the sense that now when you tabulate the votes, the total will be discrepant by 1 or more, depending on how the voting goes. So an application that might have gotten, say, a total overall score of 9 will now get a score of 8, even though it was universally supported. So we have a little bit of a mathematical problem, and that's what I believe. Am I correct in thinking that's what you're trying to address?
Yes, but the sheriff has.
And then when Sean comes next time, it's going to be all thrown off.
Glenn?
So, we're going to add to those numbers. So maybe we can,
right.
divide by the amount of votes.
So is there a formal motion of action from the committee, or?
I just wanted to point it.
No, I think it's a completely legitimate issue, and it concerns me, but I don't have a practical, solution for it. Sir, the
Glenn,
microphone is yours.
Excuse me, could I make a comment on this? I think in view of the fact that everybody has to go, and we have taken care of the people that traveled great distances, it might be expedient to just adjourn and take a step. I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. Normally, the chair would make a declaration, but given the circumstances, I think I'm going to ask for a vote.
You stand there.
Excuse me for our little internal housekeeping here. Okay, we have a motion and a second that, given the fact that those who have traveled the greatest distance, and we have this waiting issue in front of us, potentially, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Can we take that to public comment, please, before we vote?
Absolutely.
Oh, Sean's here. Come on up, Sean. It's the time to vote.
Now he can fill in for the vote that we're missing. Never mind, he can fill in for that vote that's missing.
Public comment.
Okay, the weighting issue that we had discussed earlier has been obviated to some degree, but there's still potentially an issue with different individuals constituting that weight, but I don't see any way to overcome that. So, sir, I apologize for our internal housekeeping. Please take the mic.
Thank you very much, Chairman and all committee members. My name is Brian Ahern. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Arcata Police Department. And in the interest of time and out of respect for all of you as committee members and county staff and all those who are present who still have to make presentation, we'll defer our time to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're considering application number 7, the City of Arcata.
What happened to the adjournment motion?
Okay, I guess technically we should consider your adjournment motion, yes.
No, I didn't do anything.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor of adjourning?
Can I vote against my own?
You absolutely can. Okay. So did we record one vote in favor of adjournment? And those opposed to adjournment? Okay. So we will continue for another 23 minutes here.
I'll do my best.
So we would be on application number 7, I believe it was, City of Arcata. All those voting tier, I see motions at staff table.
Chair, so all of the applications have had 8 members vote up until application number 2. That one had 7 votes. You now have a board of 8. It's up to you to consider whether or not you guys want to revote that so that you have 8 votes to deal with the weighting issue.
Okay, I think that's certainly a fair thing to do.
So I have a question.
Certainly.
I provided a selection that I assumed was by proxy that I communicated to, well, I know you're shaking your head, but let me finish what I'm saying. That I provided to the chairperson and through representative and through county staff. But the indications I'm getting is that that is not permissible and that this is the consequence of me having jury duty is that my votes aren't counted.
You're absolutely correct. It's entirely your fault.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Just to summarize, I explored your issue with staff about a couple of options. One was allowing an alternate to be seated, which was pretty clearly not allowed. And then the proxy issue also was difficult from a procedural point of view. So neither one of those mechanisms that you tried responsibly to seek was workable from an organizational point of view. So we have gone forward with the voting process. We were going to adjourn because we were concerned about the weighting issue of different numbers of members being present. We lost one member almost identically at the time that you came into the room, so that obviates the weighting issue aspect of it. We do have different individuals constituting that weighting, so technically I suppose somebody could object to that, but I don't think there's a practical solution. So at this point, we're going through the applications one by one and classifying them as either Tier 1, which is the highest priority for funding, Tier 2, or Tier 3. And that's the circumstance that you walked into. Okay. So to clarify the staff's point, we did not have an equal number of votes for application number 2, which was AJ's. With Mr. Robertson's presence, we could rectify that numerical issue. So I'm going to ask for a revote on AJ's transitional living. Tier 1 votes, please. Tier 2 votes. Tier 3 votes. Okay, so now we're numerically balanced. Okay, now.
What are those numbers?
I had 026.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are at the City of Arcata's application for the SRO and juvenile detention counselor positions. Tier 1 votes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Tier 2 votes. Okay. City of Blue Lake, this is a half-time position contracted to the deputy sheriff. Would anybody like to speak on behalf of this application? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of Tier 1 classification for 8B, City of Blue Lake?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yes, I was answering a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just.
Okay, let's do this again. City of Arcata Police Department, Tier 1.
No. Blue Lake.
Excuse me, my apologies. Blue Lake, Tier 1.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay. Application number 10, City of Eureka Police Department. Would anyone like to speak on behalf of this application? This is for mist and a waterfront ranger and various other elements.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant LaFrance. I run the CSET unit at EPD. CSET incorporates MIST. I want to give you guys some numbers real quick. So since July 1st of last year, with our MIST program, we've conducted 18 warm handoffs with drug treatment. 18. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 18 people getting drug treatment. We are daily encountering folks on the streets that are homeless, have addiction issues, have mental illness. We are reaching out to them, providing resources to them in the field where they are. They don't have to come to us, we go to them. As are for our park ranger. So since CSET started in July 1st, 2018, to the end of 2018, the unit, which includes obviously 2 park rangers, and one being a Measure Z, collected 30,460 pounds of trash. Again, 30,460 pounds of trash along our trails. A couple examples from folks that we work with this year. 2018, one individual who has a dual diagnosis of mental illness and meth and heroin addiction, who was causing physical damage along Broadway to lots of buildings. He caused a lot of trash and syringe litter. 103 contacts in 2018. Up to February of this year, he had 15 contacts. He is now in treatment. So we're not seeing him right now. Another example, a gentleman in 2018, 63 contacts, 23 arrests. In treatment and housing. Not dealing with them anymore. In our MIST program, our clinicians provide follow-up with them. Although it's not technically MIST-related, but as in the clinician side of things, but it is the officer's duties also. We encountered a gentleman who was on probation for selling methamphetamine. We arrested him twice. As of 2 weeks ago, I saw him at Betty Chin's. He went through the Uplift program, which is also part of our Measure Z request. He was clean, been clean for about 100 days, and he's actually, I believe he's one of the 70% that are employed from that program. And real quick, just location, if you've ever been to St. Vincent de Paul Soup Kitchen, or Free Meal as it's commonly called, it was a very problematic location for crime and disorder. From January 1st, 2018, we had 92 calls for service at that one location. After July 1st to the end of last year, we had 37 calls. And this is our MIST officers and clinicians being engaged with folks down there. It went from 3 robberies to 0, 7 assaults to 1, disturbances 29 to 10. Big numbers for us. We need these people.
Thank you. Okay, in reference to application 10, the City of Eureka, MIST positions and other elements, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, application 46, Eureka City Schools. This is a 1.0 FTE SRO.
Yes, good afternoon, committee members. My name is Michael Davies Hughes. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services at Eureka City Schools. The responsibility that we have is to educate our youth, but the priority that we have is to keep our students safe. I want to just give you an example of the need for this particular position. 90 minutes before I came here this afternoon, we had a student, I was called to a situation where a student had eloped from one of our schools, in which we do have an SRO. We have a partnership with the City of Eureka. Fortunately, that student was found quickly, but I believe that it was in no small part due to the coordination of services spearheaded by our school resource officer. The principal was able to call that school resource officer directly. The school resource officer was familiar with the terrain around that school, was familiar with staff members and also students. And because of that relationship and that collaboration, that student was found quickly. We do not have that kind of service in all our schools. And 4 of our feeder schools, and including 2 of the schools within the City of Eureka, or Eureka City Schools, does not have that service. And so I just wanted to emphasize, a real life situation that occurred this morning regarding the importance of such a position. So I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else speak to this application? Okay. Tier 1 voting for application 46, Eureka City Schools, SRO. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, we've already addressed application 20, so we'll be going to application 21, the Humboldt CERT program, equipment for disaster service volunteers. Anyone like to speak to this topic?
Chair, the CERT team wanted me to pass out documentation in regards to this item before you guys vote.
I beg the committee's apology, and I have to take a leave.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Until next time.
Okay.
I'm Linda Nellis, application 21 for the Humboldt CERT Coalition.
I'm sorry, Lynn, let me just let him distribute his items, and then we have a little procedural decision we have to make. We find ourselves again in this procedural issue, so I'm asking for the committee's perspective. We are at a point now where we cannot import one of our alternate members to bring the numbers back because we have a quorum that's functional, but any votes we would take here on would not be numerically proportional to the balance of them. So I'm open to the thoughts of the committee about whether we should proceed. I know we said we'd go to 5 o'clock, but I'm interested in the thoughts of the committee.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, a move and a second to adjourn. Is there a discussion of the committee?
My only discussion is that if the whole board shows up at the next meeting, the numbers are going to be skewed anyway. We're going to have one more.
Yeah.
So it'd be my suggestion to continue, get through all the applications, and then we can figure out, based on the numbers, how to read the data, and then go from there, because we still have a lot of things to do.
Okay.
My
So
suggestion.
do I understand your suggestion that the staff would record 8 of 9, 7 of 8, or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. I understand that. We do have a motion, a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Is there any public comment?
Okay, is there any public comment on the motion to adjourn? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor of an adjournment, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, so to clarify, if the staff would, from this point forward, indicate the number of votes, but also indicate like they're 7 of 8 or 6 of 8 or whatever, so we have a cue to us that these were taken at a different numerical level than the earlier ones. That way we can try to consider them at a fair and equitable level. My apologies, Linda, please go ahead.
Not a problem. I'll start from the beginning. Linda Nellis, application 21 for Humboldt CERT Coalition. I've given a page of reference material primarily for each of you, just as a reminder and also as for future reference about what our community emergency response teams are doing in the county. But more importantly, for you to see how spread out they are and that they are supporting those fire departments and law enforcement agencies throughout the county. The other important piece is that they are all volunteers. So they have been supporting us with their own donations, with community fundraisers going to their service organizations for the supplies that we do have on hand currently. But this application would bring each of us to a standard, and we are participating with 7 out of the 9 teams that are listed here. So each of them have put in, as other agencies have, for a certain amount of equipment that will bring them up to standard for their teams. And I would entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you intend to expand these teams all over Humboldt County?
That's the goal. We would love to have a team in every community, but it does require an agency liaison. Typically, it has been our fire service. In Arcata, it's the police department. We're grateful for the support that we receive from all of those local agencies. It is extra work for them because we have a liaison between the department and the team. They're volunteer auxiliary, essentially.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're categorizing application 21, the Humboldt CERT Coalition Response Team request. All those with Tier 1 vote? Tier 2? Okay. Humboldt County Adult Protective Services and the District Attorney. Anyone in the audience like to speak to this application?
Thank you. Maggie Foreman, District Attorney. This is something we paired up with Adult Protective Services, Department of Health and Human Services, to start creating something similar to the Child Abuse Services teams to address elder abuse. We have, the funding is to ask for continued funding of that, and it's literally a percentage of a couple different positions who meet. They've created a database. They're working together to make sure that no elder who is either being financially, verbally, or physically abused, that the case isn't followed through and handled appropriately. So that's the goal of it. So we would just ask for the continued support from Measure Z for this.
Thank you. Okay, we're in consideration of application 22, Adult Protective Services, the EVAS team, Tier 1 support. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, application 25, Humboldt County District Attorney. This is for modified application, as I understand it. So would you like to speak to the modification so we're clear about what the current application consists of?
That's correct, thank you. And so the modification
Yeah, I
was
see
reducing the original request to 2 positions. Just to sort of go back historically and thank the committee, when Measure Z was first on the ballot, one of the issues was everyone realized that through all of the hard budget years, the sheriff's office, the DA's office had suffered pretty severe cuts. When I took office shortly after Measure Z passed, I was surprised to see there were 9 positions in the DA's office that were frozen. 2 deputy DAs, 2 investigators, CAS coordinator, a number of positions. So part of Measure Z was to fund that, and specifically Measure Z addressed child abuse. So we have fully staffed CAS. We have 2 investigators, 2 DAs, CAS coordinator, victim witness advocate. It's critical. And part of this funding is for a grant position, administrative analyst who will address grants. I believe moving forward, we should be doing a lot more at the Child Abuse Services team. The first year in office, 2015, we did 95 interviews. Last year, we were up to 169. Many of those don't translate into criminal cases because the idea is that children at risk are being brought there, and hopefully we're addressing their problems, working with CWS and making sure they're getting the services. The grant position, the administrative analyst, I think is going to be very effective in helping us move forward for additional funding for additional workers and help at CAS for the human trafficking issue. We have to start seeing many of our teens at a much earlier stage of when they're in crisis. Hoping to get them before we actually have criminal cases that are so significant and detrimental to them for the rest of their lives. So that's why I'm seeking the administrative analyst position to help us with our current grants. 20% of the office is grant funded, but also moving forward to apply for more grants, and then the deputy DA position that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Does the staff have a clear revised number? Okay. All those in favor of Tier 1 support? Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay, application 30A, Humboldt County Public Works. Anyone like to speak to this application from the public? Okay, voting on application 30A, Tier 1? Tier 2?
I wanted, put me on 1, I'm sorry.
Me too.
Let's start over. Tier 1, please.
Too fast.
Tier 2? Okay. Tier 3, I'm sorry. 232. Okay. 30C, Humboldt County Public Works, road surfaces and general road improvements. Anyone like to speak to this on behalf of the public? Okay, committee, application 30C, Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3? Okay. Application 31, maybe I didn't make my notes correctly. Did we consider this during the?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I thought. Okay, my apologies. Okay, application 42, Southern Trinity Area Rescue, the Star Ambulance Service. Would anyone like to speak on behalf of this?
Hi, yes, my name is Amanda. I work with STAR. Just really briefly, don't want to take a bunch of time. We're looking for continued funding for 2 full-time EMTs for our ambulance. That is a fully volunteer service up until we got funds from Measure Z to provide those 2 services. So we just ask that you take into consideration to continue that funding for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're looking at application 42 then, Southern Trinity Area Rescue, Tier 1? Tier 2? Tier 3? Application 15C, Fortuna.
Yes, thank you, Chief Doberstein. Measure Z's funded a drug task force agent from our department since year one of Measure Z. Being on the executive board and being privy to the last 4 or 5 years that we've been on the drug task force, it's been phenomenal. He's been a phenomenal member of the team. We've had some of the biggest drug seizures, including of meth and heroin that we've ever seen in the county. He's an integral part of the team, and it'd be devastating, quite frankly, if he was to be taken off the team. So, thank you.
Okay, speaking to application 15C, Drug Task Forces Agent in Fortuna, Tier 1 votes. Tier 2. Tier 3. Application 17, the Eel River Cleanup Project. Anyone like to speak to this from the public?
Mr. Chair, we had a member of the public from Woodway here earlier today that was going to speak on behalf and had to take off due to a conflict. And I would just, a comment was shared by a member at our last meeting in terms of the real value of this $3,000 and how much good work this group completes in Southern Humboldt doing cleanup. There was a story that just was reported this last week. Tremendous amount of garbage debris was picked up. Best value for your buck in terms of paying someone to clean up trash. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I speak to that too?
Certainly.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this cleanup group. They're a great group of volunteers, volunteer their time. The only money they get is to pay the county dump fees and buy a little gas. And they do a tremendous job, and they provide a cohesiveness to the community too, because everybody gets a chance to volunteer to clean up, and they're doing a great job. There's one guy's campground that they pick up like every month or so, and they get 1,000 pounds of trash out of his campsite. So I strongly advocate for them.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Okay, application set. Tom.
Just want to note that this would stretch their funding. We do provide them at least, I think, about $3,600 a year to cover their dump fees. Plus, we provide dumpsters for them over and above that. This is a wonderful group. They're out there all the time, and this would really be matching existing fundings to expand their ability to clean up the Eel River. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, application 17, Eel River Cleanup Project, Tier 1. Tier 2. Tier 3. Humboldt County Department of Health and Human Services, the MIST application. Anyone like to speak to that?
Hi, my name is Anna Anguiano. I'm a mental health clinician with the MIST program. We've been receiving Measure Z funding for the past 4 years and have been working with the Eureka Police Department. We recently expanded about a year ago to the Arcata Police Department. As of this month, we started working with the Sheriff's Department in the McKinleyville Northern area. With this funding, it would help us have access to flexible housing funding and would help get folks off the streets. With doing that, there is a decrease in hospitalizations through our local hospitals, through CSU, SV, less police contacts and less time in the jail, which would overall increase community safety. That is all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Where's this, 24?
Good evening. I'll be brief. Chief Watson, Eureka Police Department. I just also want the committee to know that I support DHHS's request for funding in this matter. It is part of the MIST program. This year we did something a little different. We split the applications, but the intent all along was to mutually support the applications because it's still exactly part of the same program, an integral part. The funding's an important piece in this. The big bonus for citizens living in Arcata and McKinleyville now is they'll have access, the team will have access to use some of this funding for the homeless that are there. And as we know, they travel around a lot in the county as well, and so it benefits all of us. So it supports Eureka, it supports Arcata, supports McKinleyville and elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, in reference to application 24, the Health and Human Services MIST expansion, Tier 1 votes. Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, we have reached our agreed upon adjournment time, so lacking any motion to change that, I would entertain a motion to recess
I've
You know,
made,
I'm open to,
I've made 3 motions today to adjourn. I make a motion to adjourn.
okay, just for discussion purposes, a couple members are pointing out that there are only 5 or 6 more applications to consider.
Good.
So I would encourage the indulgence of the group to try to continue for that short period of time. Then we can start clean, because there's plenty of work to do apportioning these. We were way beyond the money available, so that's going to be an extensive discussion. So I would beg your indulgence, although you voted to adjourn. Do we have a motion to continue?
I make a motion to continue.
Is there a second? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Is there any public comment on that motion?
Okay, is there any public comment on the motion to keep going, power through the last 6? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to continue? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll continue through the next 6 or so until we meet the end. City of Eureka Public Works, this is a road improvement project. Anyone like to speak to it from the public? Seeing none, we're talking about application number 12, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Okay, we've already dealt with number 19 out of...
Chair, I have 6 votes. I have one.
Okay, let's try it again. Application number 12, City of Eureka Public Works for roadway improvements, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3.
Tier 3, I voted.
Okay. We've already dealt with 19. Number 23, Humboldt County Department of Aviation, design and planning for electrical system at Arcata Airport, or I guess Redwood County, Humboldt, organic, non-GMO, whatever it is. Would anyone like to speak to this topic?
Chair, thanks. I didn't pick the name. I just got here a few months ago. But, Cody Ruggets, Director of Aviation, speaking here on number 23. Thank you to all the committee members for serving in this public service role. And thank you to all of the applicants for all of these important projects. I'd like to highlight with our application, this is a one-time request for $81,725. We could leverage that local support for an additional $793,275 from a Federal Aviation Administration grant. And you heard from a couple of the other applicants throughout this process on aviation and the role that that plays in their emergency services. I highlighted that last week for you through the Coast Guard medical flights that not only fly into ACV, but from ACV out to other Humboldt County airports that serve all areas of the county. And we have approximately 50% of the time that at the ACV airport where this critical infrastructure is needed to serve those emergency flights to and from the ACV airport. I also would be remiss if I didn't highlight with this infrastructure upgrade that we are trying to plan for, that my father turns 60 next week, and this infrastructure is older than him. So this is something that is long overdue, and if we do not have this infrastructure, it could severely hamper all operations, emergency and otherwise, in and out of Humboldt County. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak to this application? Okay, application 23. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Tom Madsen, Director of Public Works. While airports are no longer under my authority, this is a critical issue. These lights are back from the late 40s, early 50s. There's probably more electricity going into the ground than into the cables anymore, and it is very critical. I'll just ask you, if you don't agree to this, to look at the photos of that airfield in 1964 in the floods and how many thousands of people were there and all the supplies for the entire county of Humboldt were there. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else speaking to this application?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment on this application. I believe it's the largest contribution in terms of a percentage of the total funding from an outside source. And so I think that's really cool to see, and I would encourage this to be at tier number 1. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're talking in reference to application 23, the planning funds for the electrical system at the airport in Arcata, McKinleyville. Tier 1, Tier 2. Tier 3. Okay, Humboldt County Library, this is funding for an additional security guard. Would anyone like to speak to this?
Hi, Nick Wilczek, Humboldt County Library Director. So the Humboldt County Library is one of, if not the only, de facto day shelter in Eureka. We have a lot of struggling clientele who come in that are suffering from mental illness problems, drug addiction, and problems surrounding homelessness. Not to say that that these folks are troubled by any stretch. That's not what I'm saying, but we do have behavioral issues that come along with some of this clientele. In 2009 alone, we have had to call EPD well over 100 times. I thank Sergeant LaFrance and Officer Brian Ross very much for all of their support. We are open to everybody in the county, and we take that very seriously. We take serving everybody very seriously. We have safety concerns at the library. That's for patrons, and that is for staff as well. Verbal harassment, physical threats, etc. So please, a second security guard would help very much at the library and help us continue providing a safe place and safe services for the community.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to this
I have
item?
a question for the applicant. Hi, in your application, you mentioned that you guys are partnering up with the Humboldt Area Center for Harm Reduction. I'd like you to elaborate on how the funds might be used in that partnership.
Sure. Those funds would not be used in any direct way in that partnership. We are teaming up with Hatcher. They are going to help us provide our staff with training on setting boundaries and working with certain segment of our community that is also Hatcher's primary clientele. So there's no financial anything going on with it. The partnership is merely relying on their expertise to come provide training for our staff for free.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I'm merely clearing up something that was posted on social media.
Yeah, thank you for allowing for the clarification.
Okay, anyone else speak to this application? Okay, we're addressing application 27, the library's request for a second security guard funding. Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. The Humboldt County Public Defender has been waiting respectfully and politely in the front row forever, and now is the time.
I was going to be very incendiary, but I guess I'll be more polite then and continue. Mark Revis, Public Defender's Office. Being a public defender, we're used to being the red-haired stepchild in any county organization. But the inequities that we've experienced have just grown over the years. Since the inception of Measure Z, we have been stagnant at $216,000. In the interim, millions of dollars have been granted through Measure Z funding for law enforcement, for the district attorney's office, and yet we generate no cases whatsoever. We are entirely reactionary. Every dollar that you give to law enforcement, every dollar that goes to the district attorney's office doesn't go to us, but the cases come to us. Over 90% of all criminal cases, the district attorney office files close to 6,000 cases a year. Over 90% of that is done by the public defender's office. We defend those individuals. And we have staffing which is less than half than the district attorney's office. We have extra help budget, which is 11% of the district attorney's office. We have 10 attorneys between the two offices who handle our serious felonies. Currently, we have 33 life-top cases being handled by these 10 attorneys. There's over 20 in the public defender's office, the main office right now. Every felony attorney in my office right now carries 3 to 4 life-top cases. These involve intense litigation, investigation, and we just don't have the staffing for it. At this point, any new life-top case, we have to turn away. We don't have the staffing for it. We are asking for 2 extra full-time employees, attorneys, 1 for the public defender main office, 1 for the conflict counsel office, and we're asking for 3 support staff, legal office assistants, 2 for the main office, one for the Conflict Counsel Office. We understand, just looking at where we are on the list, we are second from the bottom, or maybe third from the bottom. I think it already seems clear where we'll be standing. But ladies and gentlemen, we really ask you for your help on this. We can't do this without the funding that we need. We don't get enough from the general fund. We are asking for our fair share of Measure Z. And I know it's a large amount, but I would sincerely ask you not to put us in Tier 3 or Tier 2. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I always wanted to ask an attorney a question.
Sure.
Could you work with any less? Can you negotiate? What would you do without
We're
if?
used to working with less all the time.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, when we go into any other city or county office, it's amazing. They have desks, they have computers that are less than 8 years old. Everything we have is less. We use old equipment, old desks, old chairs. We are scrounging all the time. And yet we provide first-class service. You have in the public defender's offices individuals who care about the law, who care about the Constitution, who are idealistic, who work nights, work weekends, and do this day in and day out. We need law enforcement, and we do need the district attorney's office, and we work with the district attorney's office, and we work with law enforcement. But every case that comes down the pipe comes to us. Every case. And I would just ask you to consider the millions of dollars that Measure Z of funding has gone to law enforcement and gone to the district attorney's office. Since Measure Z has started, we receive $216,000 a year. That's it. It's unfair. It's just not just, and you're not getting the service that you really need. Now, most of us here don't require a public defender. Those rights, your rights, my rights, our rights, are protected in the persons of those people who are charged, who are arrested, and we defend those people. But those are our rights that are being defended, not just those people.
Thank you.
So I don't know if it was you last year I talked to, but I found it interesting. I mean, because like I have never used a public defender, but so if somebody needs a public defender and you don't have it, then does the county pay for private attorney?
Last year, the county paid close to $2.3 million for private attorneys when the public defender's office had to conflict and the conflict counsel office had to conflict.
So this is a deal. This is a good deal to fund you because we're saving money basically.
Oh, without a doubt.
Right, and I've been in court, not for me, but I've observed in court where the public defender comes in and meets the person they're defending at that moment. They haven't seen their case. They don't know what it is. They've got a stack of them. They're searching through and say, "Is this you?" Yeah, okay, and then they go try to defend them. And I would just hope that just because somebody doesn't have income and cannot afford an attorney, that they would have, the same quality. And I know you guys do provide that when you can. So I think it's a great deal. If we're spending $2 million at hiring attorneys to fill the gap, then this would make a difference. Do you think it would save money?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. And let me just say, we do provide excellent service, not just when we can. We provide excellent service every time. You have individuals who are dedicated to their jobs and really do work evenings and weekends, and that's every week.
Just want to say one thing. Thank you for being here and talking about that. I know it is an issue that you bring up, and our issue is that we have $3.5 million worth of funding and $4.5 million worth of existing programs, and so it's tough to say yes to a $750,000 new program. I'm just encouraging, hopefully, the county, maybe out of the general fund or something else, could step up. I know it's difficult. I'm just saying this. We're in a bad position to be in this.
And I understand. And part of the problem was the fact that when Measure Z started, we didn't step in right away. We asked for a little amount. Everybody asked for what they needed, and we sort of let that slide. So now, years after, we're trying to come up to speed, and so we are asking for a big chunk of what you have available. But it really is necessary, because if we start turning down cases, and right now, I don't think we could take another lifetop case with the attorneys that we have.
So does the money come out of the general fund to pay for the attorneys? So it's already taken out of the general fund?
Well, that's
So if we could give them this, then we'd save money.
correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Convince them.
Okay. All right, in consideration of application 28, the Public Defender's Office, a personnel staffing request, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3.
And Chair, I will just note that the Planning Commission has a meeting tonight beginning at 6, and staff are waiting to set up.
We have one more application as far as I can tell, so I think we're okay. Application number 3, the Blue Lake Rancheria Volunteer Fire Department. Anyone from the public like to speak to this item? Seeing none. Okay. In reference to application 3, Blue Lake Rancheria, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Okay. By my count and notations, that completes those applications that we judge to be eligible for consideration. Does anybody have a different viewpoint of that topic?
We just verified we got it.
It was turned down.
Jumped around a lot.
Oh, hell,
Yeah.
no, it was some.
So could staff just review real quick and make sure you feel that we've addressed the top bracket that we had deemed to be eligible in the last meeting, and make sure we haven't missed one?
I think there's some members of the public or something. The chief is sitting right there. The Paul Fire Department. Famous, maybe it's an application that was 37. Where did he go?
Okay. One just kind of courtesy, I guess, to our public. There are a group of applications that we have not considered today that at our last meeting, the committee decided were questionable as far as eligibility under the measure. If you've traveled here today to speak to any of those, I would encourage you to come to the microphone and talk to us. It probably will not affect today's deliberation process, but it may plant the seed in the future, and it seems like the least that we owe to you for your time.
We told him.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Wes Harrison, and I'm here on behalf of application 35, known to our community as Crossroads. What is residential drug treatment, and why is it so important that it is listed as the 4th service on the first page of the Measures E's application? It is important enough for our community that it is identified right up there with law enforcement and fire department. It is such a vital service that the Humboldt County Superior Court sentenced people to go to and complete residential drug treatment as a requirement of their criminal sentencing. It is so important that drug court orders participants to start their journey to recovery at the residential drug treatment programs. Hospitals refer patients to residential drug treatment as a medical necessity in an effort to save patients' lives. Probation places people in residential drug treatment in an effort to change the criminal behaviors of their probationers. In order to be called residential drug treatment, you must be licensed by the state governing organization Department of Healthcare Services. In order to be licensed, you must employ a number of licensed and certified social workers, licensed substance abuse counselors, and experienced case managers. You must provide evidence-based group therapy sessions and one-on-one counseling. You must be subject to constant site visits and audits that ensure the quality of these standards. That's what it takes to be called treatment. Providing any of those services without those licenses is nothing short of illegal. Every day, our residential drug treatment program receives at least 20 calls a day from Humboldt County citizens requesting treatment, and all 20 are told no, there is no available funding. Over a period of a year, that equals 7,300 requests for treatment denied for lack of funding. In 2018, Humboldt County closed out the year with a staggering 57 deaths related to drugs. Of those 57, 20 of those were right here in Eureka. And of those 57 men and women that we lost, I wonder how many called me asking for help that were denied services. These are the thoughts that keep me awake at night. I see that no actual drug treatment was even considered in the top tier, or in the top level, which is alarming because a clean and sober house made it to that top level. I close with this. Choosing to fund a clean and sober house but not fund a drug treatment, is like choosing to hire a painter to paint a house but not hiring a contractor to build that house. You are putting the cart before the horse. In fact, you have no horse. If you don't fund drug treatment, it goes away. A vote for application 35 would have been a vote to save lives. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Diana Livingston. I'm on the board of directors for Crossroads. I was the executive director before Wes took over my position. Crossroads has been in existence since 1974, serving this community, and right now we are in a crisis. Probation has changed the funding that they usually give us. Right now they are allowing one client to each agency per month. That has taken a devastating blow to our budget, and it's a blow that we can't sustain. Over the last 2 years, Wes has worked like crazy to put us in a position to get drug Medi-Cal. That's going to come on board in July, and we're really hopeful that it's going to change the pace of treatment because we will actually get paid enough to sustain the wages that people deserve when they do this work. But right now, everyone is taking a nosedive because of this. Our budget from Health and Human Services is $75,000 a year. It has been that for the last 15 years with no increases. I was shocked to hear from Wes at our board meeting that our application was not even considered. And I don't understand it. I filed the application for the first round of Measure Z, and we got funding from you. When I hear that you're supposed to sustain salaries over time, I guess I wonder why we're not still getting that. But I just ask you if there's any way to reconsider drug treatment. It was listed in the original Measure Z needs of this community, and we work hand in hand with law enforcement and Health and Human Services. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we hear any more on this, if we're hearing, it seems to me a point of order is these items should have been brought up under public comment.
Well, that may be my error.
No, it's not your, no.
Well, in any case, my point is that I want to at least recognize those applications that were not deemed to be eligible and so on. The amount of effort and time taken is something that I respect. And it seems to me, just as a public courtesy to those individuals, it was appropriate. You may be correct that it should have been public comment, and I will certainly consider that to be a legitimate criticism. But my goal here was simply to provide a venue for those individuals who had spent all day here to address the committee whether or not their application would ultimately be considered. That seems to me to be kind of a basic courtesy that I would want to sustain.
So a way I think that we can do that is, right now we are still technically looking at the Blue Lake Rancheria Volunteer Fire piece of agenda item D3B. I would need a motion by your committee that that the application review and request for information period be closed and that the rankings be accepted, directing staff to note the number of votes when tabulating the results. Then you guys can motion second, if that's an okay motion with you guys, and then go to public comment.
Okay.
I will make that motion.
Perfect. Thank you.
May I, please?
Just a second, Ginger. Let us do our procedural thing first. Okay. You've heard the staff's request for a motion that would essentially direct staff to take the action to tabulate the votes that were taken today, provide us with a new ranking sheet for consideration at the next meeting, and to close the consideration of the tier assignment of the applications. Is there such a motion?
That's my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Yes.
On that element?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I'm Ginger Olson, and if you vote to close your rankings, that doesn't leave the opportunity to bring in the drug treatment programs, and there are 3 have submitted questions here. And those drug treatment programs are all in line to finally be covered by Medi-Cal. But The clients that they used to get, I believe it was said that only one per month, or whatever it was, only one comes to each program from probation. Probation sends me at least 4 a month, and I'm not a treatment program. And I have enough, I get referrals from enough people. All of the transitional programs get referrals from enough people that we don't really need probations. Probation needs us. We don't need them. But that's not right. We do need them. But the treatment programs are going to go under. And if they don't come into this ranking, it's immoral. And if you close your ranking now, you're closing out drug treatment, which is the largest health problem in the United States. Humboldt County rates second in the state of California in alcoholism. I don't know exactly where they rate in drug addiction, but I'm sure it's up there. And if we don't treat it, then we're doing something wrong. And if you close your ranking now, you're closing them out.
Thank you. Laura?
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I'd like to call for the question on this motion, because again, this committee is advisory. There is a whole new opportunity at the Board of Supervisors level.
Okay. We have a motion to essentially complete the administrative process as requested by staff. Any discussion in the committee? Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We would need a motion to adjourn at this point, I believe.
I think the sheriff should do it.
Well, you did it 3 times today already, Rich. I think we want you to go all the way from here feeling successful.
I'm so sorry, Rich.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
I don't second that. I second.
Okay, the chair would declare the meeting adjourned. We'll see you on the 28th. I would encourage you to dive into the most highly rated proposals because there's going to be a lot of tinkering to be done. The amount of available money does not even approach the Tier 1 applications. So we'll be doing quite a bit of cutting and pasting and horse trading. So please be familiar with those because you're going to be called upon to make those kind of decisions. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Okay.